Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Oh, not again. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our LDI for today. I am your MC, Dr. April Reed. It is a pleasure to have everyone in this room today. With that, again, we are going to get into today's programming and welcome everyone. A couple of logistics for today's session. If you don't mind, we ask that you are present. Can you please silence your phone or cut them out on vibrate? If you need to answer, we ask that you please step outside. Also, restrooms. When you exit the room, there are women restrooms to the right and left. The ones on the left side is currently under construction, so please use the restroom to the right. Food is available if you need to get up and stretch. Make sure you go ahead and do that. We want you for today to listen with intent to gain a better understanding. The Office of Strategy has worked very hard to put together this programming. It's amazing content. We want to make sure that you have the resources that you need at your leisure. Be curious and ask questions, so raise your hands. On your tables, you will see we have sticky notes to put your questions there. Once you have questions, raise it. Someone will come by and grab them and bring them up to the podium. Also for time management, there's notes on the table along with pens and then additional resources that we'll get to. As you're here, suspend your judgment and evaluate the evaluation and criticism, and then interact with your colleagues. We're gonna have a short break and then time after with lunch provided for you to do that, and then ask questions, be curious. This is for you and your development. For the agenda this morning, again, I'm going to kick it off with Dr. Lynn to start us off. We'll have a short break around 10:30, 10:35 again, and then we'll have closing remarks around 12:30, 12:40 the latest. So again, just making up for time for the important announcement this morning. For time's sake, we will not get through the icebreaker, but I'll send it to everyone. This is a great team development for you and your team, so it'll be a part of the slides. With that, I would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Janet Lynn for opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I do actually want to acknowledge, I think, in light of all of the events, we should not and do not diminish kind of the gravity of the situation and the circumstance yesterday. It's never easy if there's any type of tragic incident. It's really hard to comprehend, and we do need to take the time to do that. And it just really reinforces the importance of safety, as Chief Booker and Scott actually mentioned. And we should always be striving to think about how can we actually make our patients safer, our people safer, our staff safer, our society safer in regards to that. And hopefully today we can also pivot and use kind of even this forum and even the agenda that we've actually set forward today to think about what is it that we can do? What are the tools and resources that we actually have available to us to allow us to be better, to allow us to improve? And so I think this is kind of the theme for today. So one of the reasons why and one of the seeds that were planted and the ideas for today's LDI came from all of you. I recall, not in this specific role, but kind of the previous role, I remember kind of having various interactions and conversations and realizing, we have like a wealth of information available to us, but not everybody knows what we have available. And some of you may recall there was like a pulse survey that was done, and this was more related to Vizient. And the question was, have you ever heard of Vizient? Do you use it? And would you be interested in it? And I think the broad data statistics were like 70% of the people had actually heard of it. Maybe 30% had actually used it or were using it actively or daily in their normal, like regular day-to-day operations. But pretty much everybody was interested to learn more and know how to access. So that really planted the seed in regard to this. And so just like all like very top performing healthcare organizations, we have a wealth of resources and a lot of resources available for us and to us to be able to kind of excel at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but also have a pulse on what's going on in our industry. So today's goal, we have basically I would say three A's that we're hopefully trying to accomplish with this LDI. So first is awareness, and so that every leader knows what resources and tools are available, and also to get a sense what's going on in our industry, what's going on in healthcare beyond our four walls, but also get excited about the things that lie ahead. I mean, if we operate in a vacuum, we operate in a vacuum. We want to make sure that we're actually bringing in innovations, things that can be actually adaptable and applied to our institution as well. Number two is access. We want to make sure that everybody knows at the end of this day how to gain access, what is available, and use these resources, hopefully even starting today. And then finally, the third A is application. So every leader should know, hopefully by the end of the day, how to apply some of these resources to the challenges, to the issues that you face on a day-to-day basis, or things coming forward. And we have a panel of people from your audience that have been using this. So peer examples to kind of give you some concrete examples of how these have been used, and hopefully help you start thinking about how this is actually useful and what's available to you. So that's kind of the intent for today. Before we do that, I want to reintroduce Scott to come back, because he's going to give us essentially a lay of our land in terms of what we have actually accomplished, what great things are we doing, but also, I mean, acknowledging we have a lot of headwinds, if you will, ahead. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't actually raise those up, and then kind of throughout the day see how we're able to use you as resources, but also our external and organizational memberships to help us be better. So thank you.
Right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right. It is great to see you all here today. I think we have a really interesting agenda for you this morning. And I'm looking forward to all the sections of this agenda. I'm also looking forward to Ford Coles from the advisory board to share an external perspective on healthcare. Janet and I I think Caroline were at an advisory board meeting last fall, and we saw Ford give this presentation. It really is helpful to understand in context with where we are. But before we talk about the external environment, I want to talk about us internally. And I first want to really acknowledge the leadership changes that have happened recently. And in addition, organizational changes can cause concern or uncertainty. In addition to organizational changes, we're dealing with federal and state regulatory changes. Requirements from accreditation bodies are changing. And beyond that, healthcare is constantly changing. But I want to share what absolutely remains constant and does not change, and that is our mission: to advance health for everyone through outstanding clinical care, education, research, and social responsibility. This mission does not change with any leadership changes. It is the core and foundation for what we do. Our vision, to shape the future of healthcare through innovative and advanced clinical care, does not change. And our values of inclusion, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence will continue to guide the way we lead, collaborate, and show up for our patients and each other every day. We have a clear strategic plan and well-defined goals that will continue to drive our work forward. And if you're in this room today, you're a leader of UI Health. And together, I'd say we form an exceptional team with deep experience, shared purpose, and strong alignment with our mission, vision, and values. So even with organizational changes, those things remain the same and give me confidence in our future. I think it's an exciting time to be a part of UI Health. There are so many great things going on in our organization, and we have a lot to be proud of and a lot of things to look forward to. And that's what makes me excited to be here. So just to go through those, what I think about when I talk about what we're doing in our organization, I think about our 5 strategies, and I'll start with the strategy to be a zero-harm organization. One of the perplexing things we've had over the last few years is a seemingly significant disconnect between our really good accreditation and regulatory visits and our less than stellar publicly reported quality scores. We don't believe they've been at the level of care we provide. And so one of the, I'll just share, from a CMS perspective, we have been rated a 1 or 2-star hospital since 2016. We've been rated by Leapfrog as a C or D rated hospital since 2013, and thanks to John Radosta for creating this slide. For the last 2 years, Sagar Harwani, Dave Chestik, Michael Jatu, Tom Perrone, and the data integrity team have looked at a very detailed level at at our publicly reported data and have identified ways we can more accurately document our patient status and complexity, which is leading to improving quality scores. We thought we were better than a C or D organization, and very soon our scores are going to reflect that. So although we can't confirm this yet, we have confidence that in May, our Leapfrog score will increase significantly, possibly a B, possibly even an A. In July, our CMS star rating will also significantly increase to a 3 or a 4. This is a huge deal for us, really big. And I hope this will give the public and those of us internally a renewed sense of pride in terms of what we do. So thank you to Sagar, Dave, Michael, Tom, and the data integrity team. I know some of you are here. If you could stand and be recognized, I think that would be great. Thank you all. In addition to our data integrity work, there have been tremendous amounts of progress in the last year on our quality metrics: PSI 90, central line infections, urine catheter infections, surgical site infections, MRSA in the blood, and C. diff. Thanks to the quality, safety, and all our clinical teams for these improvements. We are really on an upswing from a quality and safety perspective. So moving forward, if we want to be a consistent Leapfrog A, if we want to achieve CMS 5 stars, we need to strictly adhere to our clinical processes and best practices. It's important to note, and this is from Sagar, that all the top performing hospitals are working on this. And so the bar gets farther down the field in terms of hitting those statistics. So what's an A today may be a B tomorrow. What's a 5 today may be a 4 tomorrow. So we need constant vigilance from everything we do. Patient safety is our highest priority, as we talked about earlier, and it's going to take all of us with integrity, precision, and vigilance in our processes to maintain and achieve those higher ratings. Another incredible achievement this year is our recent Magnet accreditation, which is an honor received by only 10% of hospitals in the United States. Magnet recognizes organizations for exceptional patient care, nursing innovation, and professional practice. It's the gold standard, signifying better patient outcomes and higher satisfaction. This is certainly a positive reflection on our nursing team, but also on our organization overall. And I'd like to thank Ty Hughes-Dillard, Osei Amike, and the entire nursing team who led us through this incredibly significant process. If all the nursing leaders in the room would stand so we can recognize you, please. Yeah, Dave, stand up. Stand up. Everybody, if you're a nursing leader. Not a lot of interest in standing up this morning, huh? We'll keep clapping. So from a patient satisfaction perspective, we're making progress as well, and I think it's really helpful to look at this over time. Our overall inpatient scores have steadily increased since fiscal year 2019 from 64.3, which was the 18th percentile, to 71.1 in fiscal year 25, which is the 56th percentile. Great improvement. In addition, the overall clinic scores have steadily increased since fiscal year 2019 from 85.3, which was the 9th percentile, to 89.9 in fiscal year 25, which was the 21st percentile. So we're on an upward swing and we're improving. And patient satisfaction continues to be a top opportunity for us as well. And I'm confident our scores will continue to increase if we continue to focus on the strategies that Sheila Cook and the excellence and experience team are facilitating with us. And I'd say it's critical to look at our services through our patients' eyes to make sure that we are a patient-centered organization. Next, engaging culture. As you all know very well, we measure employee and practitioner engagement each year. And in 2025, we saw increases in both groups, and importantly, for the first time, we matched the national academic engagement scores in both groups. So nationally, the trend is downward, as you see here, and we're on an upswing. And you all are critical to this. Every single person in the organization impacts this as well. So thank you to engaging your teams positively to get these results. This is also an ongoing opportunity for us, and we certainly want to be better than average, and an engaged team will help us meet our goals. So I'm confident in this as well, that it will continue to see an upward trend if we continue to focus on the strategies that Kathy Temple and the employee experience team are facilitating with us. So good things coming there as well. I'm also proud of being a part of an organization which supports its community through service, health equity, and local hiring perspectives. From a health equity perspective, nearly 50% of our patients have Medicaid coverage, while another 5% are uninsured. 73% of our patients are Black or Hispanic. Addressing health equity is what we do every day. There are many programs that exemplify this. One I'll highlight is our sickle cell program. We are consistently ranked among the top 10 institutions in the world for sickle cell disease based on clinical studies, publications, and NIH funding. Our program has cured 60 patients with sickle cell disease through stem cell transplantation, 35 from fully matched sibling donors and 25 from half-matched relative donors. This is amazing, really is. So thank you to our sickle cell team. The human resources team is also doing a great job training and hiring from our local community. Our work with the Westside United reflects a deliberate commitment to being an anchor institution for the communities we serve. Local hiring is not only a workforce strategy, but also a health equity strategy. So by creating clear pathways for employment for residents of the West Side, we strengthen economic stability, build trust, and ensure our workforce reflects the neighborhoods that rely on us for care. We set a clear organizational goal that at least 15% of our annual hires come from zip codes represented by the Westside United communities. Here are the results. You see the successes we've had since 2018. We exceeded the goal again in 2024 at 18%. Thanks to Kinga Kielman and the hospital recruitment team. Let's give them a round of applause for this. Another great story at UI Health is our use of Epic. We were recently recognized on the Epic Honor Roll for implementing significant numbers of Epic's best practices. Achieving this in such a relatively short period of time since we went live in September 2020 is really impressive. You see, we achieved magna cum laude level, which recognizes organizations at the top of their class globally. So thank you to the information services, nursing informatics, and chief medical information officer teams for leading the way to achieve this. Thank you. Next, strategic growth. So there is demand in our community for our services. Our brand continues to be more recognized and trusted every year. And in terms of serving more patients, we've seen significant increases in volume in the last few years. On the inpatient volumes, we have increased since 2022. And very importantly, our length of stay is decreasing, which is a significant lever for us to serve more patients because, as you all know, we're a very full hospital. There are many people working on length of stay, and I'd like to recognize John Radosta, Ronnie Williams, Ty Hughes-Dillard, Colleen Morley, David Barishman, and the care management and social work teams for their work and leadership on this. This is great progress. Thank you. So we've also increased volumes in the emergency department, surgery, clinics, among others, which also shows confidence that the community has in us. And everyone here impacts our ability to serve more patients in these areas and all others. We are investing in our facilities to continue to serve more patients. I'm very excited about the construction of the Grenshaw parking garage, which will add 1,050 new spots for staff, which will really be great. We're very actively planning for new construction adjacent to the emergency department, known as the Southeast Quadrant. We're also planning for our long-term future from a facilities perspective with our master facility plan, and Julia Louie, who's here today, will talk about these projects in more depth in a little while. In 2026, our industry faces significant financial challenges, and because of this, our sustainable future pillar is really something we need to focus on. In terms of challenges, and this list is from Larry Appel, some of the upcoming challenges or uncertainty relate to efforts to reduce hospital reimbursement. And if you're keeping up with the news, you've probably seen a lot of these, especially in the last few days. Upcoming Medicaid enrollment pressures is one that's going to be significant over the course of the next couple of years. The Affordable Care Act subsidies ended December 31st, which has led to extremely high premiums for many people on the ACA plans. And I think it's easy to say, and we can say confidently, that this will lead to less people with insurance. And we've already started to see that in terms of patients having less insurance due to this. There's talk about Medicaid disproportionate share cuts, which fortunately in the last few days have been delayed for another 2 years. But if you hear that, any significant decrease in our disproportionate share payments will impact us dramatically. There have been proposals to change the 340B program from a discount to a rebate process, which fortunately also has been delayed indefinitely, but another threat to our organization. The health benefits for immigrant adults plan has been eliminated, and we expect and we've seen that this is starting to impact patients who we will continue to see, but this will increase our bad debt over the course of time. Although we haven't seen the impact of tariffs, we estimate that this could impact us by $15 to $40 million. So that's something we need to keep up with as well. And there's also potential of eliminating site-neutral payments, which would impact us greatly also. So a lot of pressure on our financial aspect of our business. It is important for us all to understand our financial performance in light of these risks. So this shows our cash flow margin, or EBITDA, which stands for earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. A strong cash flow enables us to fund our operations, our capital expenses, including equipment, technology, renovations, new construction, and enables us to have a strong credit rating if we need to go and buy and borrow money. So the lower this number is, the higher the cost on borrowing money. You see that in fiscal year 2025, it was a difficult year from a financial perspective for us. Fiscal year 26 is improving, but we're slightly behind budget in the first 6 months of the fiscal year. From an operating margin perspective, which includes interest, depreciation, and amortization, you see the trends from fiscal year 21. And it's important to note that in fiscal years 21 and 22, we had some COVID relief funds there. We are rebounding from our negative margin in fiscal year 25, which included the strike costs, but we are still behind our fiscal year 26 operating margin targets. So this is reflecting challenges as well. One of the indicators we're going to carefully watch over the course of time is our charity care, as less people have insurance. And you can see our charity care numbers increased dramatically in fiscal year 25 to $103 million of charges, which equates to $38.3 million in cost. So what does this all mean to us? We really need to ensure our financial health. And this includes our ability to invest in people, processes, equipment, facilities, and new services. So we need to focus on identifying ways to reduce and avoid costs and make sure our revenue is, we're getting the revenue that we've earned from our insurance companies. And I'll give you some examples in a minute, but in terms of cost, my request for each of you is to thoroughly review all new and replacement positions. We have labor contracts, and of course, we're going to honor those, and we need to grow. So these decisions are challenging, but we really need to make sure we're managing our staffing costs very closely. Related to that, please, if you have overtime, monitor that very closely. If you have agency, we need to work to reduce that as much as possible. We are working on supply cost savings, and I'll share a few success stories as well. So first, I'd like to highlight the work that Mike Fitzgerald, Dorothy Starostecki, Laura Henham, Paul Gorski, Tyler Gibbs, and the leadership of the Maine and SCB ORs. They have, with the help of our surgeons, renegotiated contracts, switched to equally good alternative lower-cost products, and managed inventory, all saving $3.4 million a year. Yesterday, they signed a new contract that will save another $1.2 million. So there's more to come from this group. It's really just getting started, and there's great opportunity for us in that. There's also great work going on in finance and revenue cycle. I'll tell you, this team is really focused on ensuring we get paid accurately for the work we do and according to our contracts with insurers. In the time frame of fiscal year 16 through fiscal year 24, this group recovered $75 million. Think about that. In fiscal year 25, the team recovered $5 million, and in the first 5 months of fiscal year 26, $2.5 million. So I'd like to thank Mark DeVar, Chandra McCrae, Allison Ramsden, Ralph Bone, Jennifer Weston, and Mike Nichols for ensuring we're getting paid what we're owed. So thank you. In addition, the collaborative efforts of revenue cycle, information services, and ambulatory services to create efficiencies in patient scheduling, registration, and after-hour answering services have resulted in improved patient experience and a $4.3 million savings over the last 4 years. It's pretty impressive also. So thank you to Carol Shive, Tammy Nuremberg, Jack Van Overloop, Neil Sheff, Warren Hunter, Bob Squirt for these great results. So thank them as well, please. So while our current environment is certainly difficult from a financial perspective, and there's all sorts of challenges that we'll always have in healthcare, the fundamentals of our business remain strong. And I think together, if we're focused on these things, we'll get through all these challenges and continue to be able to serve our community exceptionally well. And I'll end by saying I'm excited about being a part of this organization. I'm proud to work here. I'm proud to work with all of you. I think we have terrific days ahead. They won't be without challenges, but that's why we're here in these roles, to address those challenges, to keep us moving forward. I'll just end by saying thank you for all you do for each other and our patients every day. So thank you all. And with that, I have the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Ford Coles. Ford is one of the advisory board's thought leaders in the area of health system economics and strategy, and is the keynote speaker at annual meetings for the advisory board strategy membership. He's well-versed in healthcare history and many reform initiatives we've gone through in the past 3 decades. And I found when I heard this earlier, that perspective of looking back over the course of time is really helpful as we think about where we are today. Ford is a healthcare economist by training and has participated in every major advisory board research initiative since 1992. So please welcome Ford Coles.
So I just wondering why my glasses are always so dirty. I cleaned them in the hotel room. Somehow between the hotel room and this building, I don't know, it's like I dipped them in sewage. If somebody has an answer to that question, I don't touch my face a lot. Anyway, it's just one of those things. It's always an issue for me. Can barely see you. I mean, I'd like to start with I always like to start with a story, not my glasses, but because we're not socialized with graphs and charts, right? It's not like your parents stood over your crib. Damien, look at this growth chart. I'd like to show you, this is how I'd like you to grow and play soccer. We're told stories. Our parents tell us bedtime stories. We tell each other stories in the playground, and we tell our college friends our stories, right? And I was looking for a story about rapid change, because I wanted a story that would sort of typify, I think, a lot of what you're feeling right now. Most change in our lives is slow and organic. We grow up and our thinking changes and we face different challenges in life, right? So you don't even really notice the change as much. But sometimes the change is far more rapid, like a sort of an asteroid hit, And that sounds very negative. Sometimes it's very positive. Sometimes it's very negative. It's just, you have that sense of vertigo. The writers say, like, the world tilted on its axis. You know that feeling? What that feeling is like all of the assumptions that you start the day with have all of a sudden changed, right? My mom likes to talk about seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I don't think my mother particularly watched the Ed Sullivan Show very much, but she happened to be watching that night on a little black and white television. And she said to me, Paul McCartney stepped forward to the microphone and was like, "Close your eyes." And she was like, "Rrr!" Everything altered. It's like music was not the same to me after that second. She said, rock and roll, when I was a kid, rock and roll came from Memphis and Detroit. She said, I didn't even know where Liverpool was. If you'd asked me if that was in England, I didn't even know that. She said, rock and roll was a front man, Elvis, with a bunch of nondescript people behind him. There were no groups. There were no rock and roll bands in the way that you and I think of them, right? Everything changed the way she saw music in that moment. I'm guessing everybody here, almost everybody here, remembers where they were on September 11th, right? It's just one of those moments when, like, whoa, I was in a hotel room in Tampa getting ready for a talk. It's just the world was different that day, right? The one I like to think about, because it was so formative for me, was this one when I was in school. School feels much more formative somehow. I grew up in a bipolar world when I was a little kid. There was the American liberal democratic capitalist model, and there was the Soviet totalitarian statist model, and those were kind of your choices. I mean, there were lots of things in between. There were the Scandinavians and their social democracies. There were military dictatorships in South America. But, you had to kind of pick a pole, right? Remember? And everything about the way we looked at the world was oriented that way. The Cold War. And then one day, it was just gone. not in a bad way, we won. But, you know, the wall came down. The Soviet Union shortly thereafter collapsed. And that was a good thing, but I got to tell you, it felt like pedaling a bicycle when the chain falls off. You know what I mean? I was like, where the hell did that go? Like, and then all of a sudden it was a unipolar world, at least for a little bit. I wouldn't call it that anymore. I'm not sure how to address the world on the right-hand side, those two gentlemen. I have many friends call it a multipolar world. Some friends of mine who work in this, you know, work in security call it a bipolar world with China. I don't know, you tell me, like, but it's not what it was, right? And it was a sense of vertigo. When I look at healthcare, and I do it with humility, I got to tell you, because Scott told you how long I've been doing this. I thought the Clinton plan would pass. I know that's before some of you were born, but like, you know, I mean, I did a whole year of work getting University of Illinois Health ready for that plan. A whole year. Many binders of work I did. Those days we had binders of work, right? Because everybody in America, this organization would have become Kaiser Permanente. Nobody remembers the Clinton plan, but everybody would become a Kaiser. Everybody, University of Illinois Health would have a health plan, an insurance function, a doctor function, a hospital function, everybody. We were all going to be these closed little Kaisers all over the country. I mean, it was a hell of a change, and I spent a year to get you ready for that. And it was all junk. The law disintegrated on Capitol Hill in 15 minutes. I took all those binders, I'm not kidding, and put them in a dumpster behind our building, like a whole forest of trees. We thought the Balanced Budget Act of 1997 was an asteroid hit. Because Medicaid's a bigger payer for UI Health, but for most of providers in Illinois, for most providers in Chicago, for most providers in the country, Medicare is the much, much bigger payer. And the Balanced Budget Act of 1997 was Medicare. All inflation adjustments were frozen, which means every client of mine took a 3 to 4% across the board pay hit that year. And we thought an asteroid had struck. And what happened? Every rural hospital in the country marched into Bob Dole's office and said, we're closing. And they created the Critical Access Program. They mitigated it. They softened the hit. They had changed the inflation adjustments. It wasn't an asteroid hit. It was like a big speed bump. I want you to understand the One Big Beautiful Bill and its implications, as Scott appropriately started with, right? But I also want you to have in mind, as I talk you through this, let's stare it in the face for what it is. But I also want you to know 100% it is being relitigated and mitigated as we speak. If it's an asteroid hit, it's a weird one because it drops in bits over like 8 years. So I want to look at it and I want to stare it in the face because it has strategy implications for UI Health. But I also want that humility in all of us. It's already being changed. Right? And it's a long period of time. I grew up in this world of healthcare. I think it's largely still true, although I do wonder how much of it is changing now and how fast. I don't ever call healthcare broken. I know some of you feel that way, and I perfectly understand why. The social determinants of health that you face are startling. I don't call it broken because it's not patriotism or bias toward you. I simply don't feel that. I would happily bring my 86-year-old mother here. And I don't say that because she's in great shape. She's not. She's got AFib. She has a pacemaker defibrillator. She's pre-diabetic. She had a bad fall 2 years ago. She's not great. I would happily bring her here. I would bring her to you with relief. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't take my 86-year-old mother to broken and feel relief about it. Everybody in this room knows what broken feels like, and you don't take your 86-year-old mother there and feel confident about it. I don't say it's perfect, but I don't say it's broken. Scott did not just show you broken. He showed you imperfect, right? He showed you areas of improvement. But what I would say is it's fragmented. But fragmented is a weird word, isn't it? Sounds like an insult. Broken is an insult. Fragmented is not an insult. It's just a description. Let me give you it can mean good things, it can mean bad things, it can mean all kinds of things, right? I'll give you an example. I've worked in the English healthcare system. I've worked in the Canadian healthcare system. I've worked in the Australian healthcare system. That was fairly easy. They all speak English. I have not worked and lived in Germany or Japan or France, but I have, as an economist, studied their healthcare systems. I know how they're paid. I know how they're incented. I know their productivity. I know their outcomes. Let me tell you something that I think a lot of people have forgotten, especially in places like Chicago. Every healthcare system on the face of this earth rations care. Every single one. I've seen it, without exception. Healthcare is an incredibly expensive, complicated good that every single person in this room wants right now in unlimited amounts. There is only one way human beings have ever dealt with demand like that, and that is we ration it. America is a wealthy country, the wealthiest on earth. If Germany became a state right now, it would be the 51st state behind Mississippi. Did you know that? That's how far we've left the Europeans in the dust. Germany would rank behind Mississippi now in per capita income. So it's a wealthy country, but it doesn't matter how wealthy we get. We'll never have enough money for that system. We will never have enough money for unlimited health care, everything you want right now. Never. The fragmentation exposes the rationing to you. It lets you see the little man behind the curtain, to quote the Wizard of Oz. So let me give you an example. In England right now, if you have cancer, and there are 4 tests to take your treatment to the next level, your doctor at the NHS is never going to tell you about the 3 that their system doesn't pay for. Why would he torture you with that information? You're never going to see those 3 tests. The only test you're going to see is the one that's in their protocol and that is paid for by taxes. You're never going to see the other 3. Why would he torture you with that information? In Chicago, if you get cancer and you go to your doctor, he's going to say, there are these 4 great tests to take your treatment to the next level, Mrs. Smith. And then you go to United Healthcare and they're like, we only pay for one of those. And you're like, son of a bitch. I just got rationed. Oh, you were rationed in England. Nobody bothered to tell you. They just didn't tell you. I'm an American. I like information. I'm still going to be pissed. I'm still going to hate United. I'm still going to be mad at my employer. But I would rather know than not know. That's just the way I was raised, right? And you were too. Why won't my insurance company pay for GLP-1s for me? I gained some weight over Christmas. I could stand to lose a few pounds. Why won't they buy me that drug? Are they so short-sighted, damn it? Don't they see the long-term payoff? Don't they understand if I were thinner, I would have less of a chance of developing diabetes, I would have less of a chance of cardiac disease, I would have a significantly smaller chance of cancer. My knees would last longer, by God. I'd be thinner. Why won't they buy that drug for me? Tell me. So they're so mean-spirited, they're so short-sighted. Why? How come? Why won't they buy that drug for me? Tell me.
You've been rationed.
I've been rationed, but it's an interesting rationing, isn't it? The reason they won't buy that drug for me is the average American stays in a commercial health plan for 2.5 years. United's like, I'm not buying you that drug. You're going to go not have your heart attack for Cigna. Why do I have to take all the hit? It's not my problem. That's not evil. That is fragmentation. It's fragmented, right? We want physicians to be more careful about the things they do at UI Health, and we pay them fee for service. Right? We pay them to do more. Fragmentation. What that has resulted in is an unbelievably complicated American healthcare system. Fragmentation produces complication, which means change in our industry is almost always internal. I love it when I meet with these would-be disruptors, by the way. They're so much fun. I'm going to pick on Walmart. I like Walmart, but I'm going to pick on whenever I meet with the Walmart healthcare people, it's always the same conversation. I'm going to go and I'm going to kick some ass. These UI health people, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the supply chain. I'm Walmart. You think I don't know the supply chain? I'm going to knock these doctors' heads together. And then what happens every time they come into your industry? Every single time. They're like, oh, God, what do you mean you have 9,000 contracts? Like, I walked down the hallway and I broke 13 federal laws. And they flee you. They flee. I'm going to go back and sell garden hose. It was way easier than this, right? It never works. No one's coming, UI. No one's coming to knock you over or to save you. No one's coming. They're not coming. This reminds me of that famous quote from Abraham Lincoln. When this is in that Ken Burns Civil War series. If you haven't seen it, it's great. Lincoln's watching the country disintegrate, heading to the Civil War. And he comments famously, no European or Asian power, by force of arms for 1,000 years, will take a drink from the Ohio River. If we are to be destroyed, we will be the authors of our own destruction. That's you. No one's coming. If healthcare in Chicago is better or fixed or changed, it's not going to be Walmart. It's not going to be CVS Aetna. It's going to be you. No one's coming. Which, by the way, is a description of what? Agency. Scott showed you all the headwinds, and I know it doesn't always feel like that, to say the least, this morning after what happened. I know you feel powerless a lot. But the definition of agency is what? No one else is going to fix it but you. That literally is the definition of agency. It's all up to you. No one's coming. It's your power. And I would remind you of all the things that have already changed in our lives. Remember what I said about fast change versus slow change? Most of the stuff about your healthcare careers has just changed so slowly you didn't even notice it. But these are radical differences over 20 or 30 years. When Scott and I met, healthcare was all about, look at the second column. It was an inpatient game. When I started talking to hospital executives 30 years ago, this was an inpatient competition. Yeah, there was outpatient care, of course there was, but it was a sideshow. Nobody concentrated on that. It was like, oh, that little thing we do with the doctors and give them some cut. Who in this room would say that? Anybody in this room who said outpatient care is a joke or a sideshow, you'd get fired for being that dumb, right? Outpatient care is where all of the competition is. It's where UI is going to grow the most in the next 10 years. It's where most of the growth is now. Does the hospital matter? Absolutely, the hospital matters. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that nobody in this room would say this is an inpatient-only business. But all of us would have said that 25 years ago. Nobody in this room would say we're only paid fee-for-service. Look at the right. Does fee-for-service matter to UI Health? Oh, yeah. We still get a shocking amount of fee-for-service. But you're paid 32 ways to Sunday. You get full risk contracting, you get partial risk contracting, we have accountable care organizations, we have bundled risk for surgeries from Medicare and Medicaid. We're dinged on our HEDIS scores and our HCAP scores. Scott's showing you some of the grades that matter. All of these things matter. We're not just paid fee-for-service. Nobody in the room would say this. But you would have said it 20 years ago. You didn't even notice it. It just left slowly in dribs and drabs. And there are some on there that are changing right now. That third one. The surgeons I talk to still think they're the sexy cutting edge of healthcare. These are painful conversations, especially with the orthopedic surgeons. You know how they are. It's like, I don't want to burst their bubble. Because does surgery matter? Of course it matters. It's still where we make all our money. It's how we pay for everything at UI. But it's not the sexy cutting edge of healthcare. It's not. It hasn't been for 10 years. The sexy cutting edge of healthcare is drugs. Drug spending is going up 5 times faster than surgery spending. Innovation in the drug business is many, many times the innovation in the surgery business right now, even with robots and new technologies. It's not even close. It's not even comparable. So that's a change. You didn't even notice it because it's stuck in your big brains that surgery is still the sexy cutting edge of healthcare. It's not. It's fading. Doesn't mean it's not important. It's just a change that's happening slowly. I grew up in an America where young people were healthy and old people were sick. And that's the way the whole system is built, by the way. You know that, right? That's how Social Security is built. That's how Medicare and Medicaid are built. Hell, that's how every commercial insurance company in the country is built. Young people pay money in and get nothing. Give me the money, I'm going to hold it for you, huh? And then when you're like 59, you're going to get a little bit of it back. That's the American bargain. Because they don't need it. They're 27. The world is their oyster. We need it. But does that feel like Chicago to you? I got to tell you, you look pretty good to me. Most of the people in this room look like they went for a run this morning. I do announcing. I'm announcing a basketball game where I live in Ohio on Friday night. They don't look that good. I'm not talking about the basketball players. They look magnificent. I'm talking about the average high school student who walks by my booth. They just don't look that good. They're heavy. They look depressed to me. That's also because I'm reading into it, because I know they are depressed. I know the numbers. Their color's off. They don't look like they've slept. They're on their stupid screens all night. You know what I mean? It's not the world you grew up in. It's not. I got hard numbers on it. And you talk to the insurance companies, they're like, what the hell's going on? These people aren't supposed to take out of the system. They're just supposed to give me money. What are these 27-year-old men with colon cancer? Where the hell did this come from? Why are all these kids depressed? Why is there all this breast cancer in 20-something women? Where's this coming from? They're supposed to give me money and not take anything. The whole actuarial basis is off. We're adjusting to it, but it's off, right? It's not the Chicago you grew up in. It's different. And so is this the new one? There's enough truth on this slide. I wanted to share it with you guys. It's still evolving, but these are just some thoughts I had, right? That we live in a world of rising and, in fact, frustrated expectations. People are mad. Mad at us, mad at everything, mad at themselves. Frankly, I don't even know how much of this has anything to do with you. Yes, there are some problems, some glaring issues in healthcare that we need to address, right? It's still the #1 source of personal bankruptcy. It's hard to find a pediatrician if I move to a new town. It's really hard. Yeah, it's annoying that they give me, I was at the dermatologist yesterday. They gave me the same stupid clipboard. Really? Again, the clipboard? I go to FedEx, I give them my driver's license. They have my whole life. But I have to keep getting your gross clipboard that I think is covered with bacteria every time I come in here. It's like my glasses. I don't want to touch that, But I'm not going to punch a nurse in the face because of the clipboard. I'm not going to do it, nor are you. 82% of nurses were assaulted last year. That's not the clipboard. That's something way deeper and darker going on in our society. And I don't think a lot of it is your fault, frankly. I don't. I think it's other stuff. I'll give you an example of my thinking on this. My grandmother grew up in a poor coal mining town in West Virginia. The only people my grandmother saw getting health care were other poor coal miners. So she set her healthcare service expectation dial at poor coal miner. And that's exactly what she got. And she was happy. Like she got what she expected. But that's not true of anybody in this room. You're watching Jeff Bezos' wedding in Venice. Right? You're getting healthcare advice from the Kardashians. You know what I mean? Not you, Janet, but you know what I mean, right? Right? Scott is like, looking at TikTok. My 21-year-old daughter right now is getting her healthcare advice from an anorexic teenage girl on TikTok. I watch her. Don't tell me she's not. I've seen her at it. She hides it. I know what you're doing. Right? So we come in loaded for bear. We don't come in with poor coal miner. We come in with crazy billionaire. I want crazy billionaire healthcare. Yeah, you're not going to get that ever in your whole life. And then you're going to punch the nurse, right? Because we act out now, which means we're seen not as the architects and the fixers, but as inertia. Why aren't you changing it, UI? Why haven't you fixed it? Why don't you give me everything I want tomorrow like Amazon? Which leads to these vacuums. And this is really what I want in your big brains as I take you through this, is what I'm seeing in the American healthcare system right now. It's not disruption. Please know, that's a really different D word, and this was carefully chosen by me. This is not a story of disruption. No one's coming. Let me repeat it. It's up to you. But that doesn't mean that there isn't change. It's just more subtle and sneakier and more quiet. If you create a vacuum, what do we know about vacuums in this universe? Nature abhors them. No vacuum ever stays in Chicago or anywhere else in the universe. It's always filled. And we're creating these vacuums all over healthcare because traditional parts of the industry are pulling back or retrenching. Scott mentioned a whole bunch of them to you. But something's creeping in there. Sometimes UI will invite these things. Sometimes these are your partners. These are your trusted friends. Some other ones you will fight tooth and claw. But you need to know they're happening and how it's changing the industry, because that's the story of the industry this year. Diffusion, not disruption, but diffusion. And there are 3 areas I want to go deep on with you. What's going on with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act? What's it doing to the entitlement program and the safety net? What are the changes? Scott alluded to a whole bunch of them. What's going on with the insurance companies? Because they're not doing well. I know. You're not going to cry any crocodile tears for United or CVS Aetna, nor would I ever ask you to. No crocodile tears, right? But they're not doing well. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois is not doing well. And it has implications. It creates vacuums in terms of how care happens in this state. And then last but not least, what's going on with us? And what's really happened, the most important thing that's happened, I think, is sort of a trust deficit, a trust vacuum. And that's happened to all parts of American society, by the way. I am not picking on you. It's just that trust matters more to us than it does to most industries. So it's magnified, that lack. We're doing way better than most people. I'll show you the numbers. Americans still trust you way more than they trust almost anything else, except firemen. And even the nurses, I think, have the firemen beat. Thank you, nurses. I'm not going to punch you. But we are declining, and it matters hugely for UI, right? So what's that vacuum look like, and how do we fill it? Let's begin with the One Big Beautifulness. And again, I'm going to just say this. The advisory board is, by charter, apolitical and neutral. We do not lobby. We do not advocate. We don't take sides. It is not my job. I don't do it. You can get your freak on, by the way. Feel free. You can stand up and rant. That happens in my talks now. It's weird. Like, oh, gracious, somebody's ranting. That's okay. You have a right to your opinion and views. I just want you to know I'm not giving you a political philosophy. I don't do that. That's not my job. But I will not varnish it. I will tell you what's going on. And exactly what I think of it in terms of the implications. This is not a healthcare law. I think you all know that, but I think it bears repeating. There's not some healthcare plan. If you're waiting for it to be revealed, there is none. That's not an insult to Trump. It's not. It's just not what gets that guy out of bed in the morning. Every president since George Washington has had passions and priorities. Trump has them. He's not a subtle man. I think you know what they are. They've come to Chicago, right? Immigration, safe borders, insourcing manufacturing, tariffs. You don't have to love them. You can love them or hate them, but you know what they are. Healthcare is not one of them. It's just not. The damage to us is a byproduct of a tax code change and increased funding for the military. Those are good things, by the way. I'm not insulting those things. I'm just saying they needed money. So they're taking about $1 trillion out of Medicaid over a very long period of time. By the way, it doesn't even shrink Medicaid. It just shrinks the growth of Medicaid, if you're wondering. People call it a cut. As an economist, I'm always like, it's not technically a cut. It's a less more. That's how big Medicaid is. Even a hit like that doesn't actually shrink it. It alters the growth trajectory of it. But my God, is there a lot of pain in that, right? I'll show you what it looks like. And even with this, you should also be aware, even with that money coming out of Medicaid, this still punches a further giant hole in our deficit and debt as a country. Federal debt right now, does anybody know where it is? What's federal debt as a percentage of GDP? Don't Google it. 123%. If we took everything we make and manufacture and all the value we create in a single year, it would not pay off our debt. If this were you personally, if this were your personal finances, you would lie in bed with your eyes open for 2 days and then have a stroke and die. That's where we are as a country. We spend more money on interest payments than we do on the US military. This is in a world where there are drones over Poland, the Taiwan Straits are heating up, we're, grabbing Venezuelan dictators. It's not a great mix. And it only gets worse because of this, even with $1 trillion coming out of Medicaid, which of course enacted pay-go cuts, automatic, 4% across the board cut to Medicare, which, and I would have told Scott this, was never going to be enacted. They waived it immediately when they reopened the government after 43 days. I never thought that they would implement it because it's too much damage. So what does this mean? They're already mitigating it. They're already altering it. There was already a giant gut punch to you that didn't happen. So keep that in mind. Keep that essential humility in mind. They're already changing it, right? It does change Medicaid, no question, as you know. Look, this changes an assumption for me, and I'm not saying this as an insult to either side. In my experience as an economist, Democrats like entitlement programs, Republicans are more comfortable with safety net programs. We can debate the difference between the two. And I'm not taking sides. They're both noble endeavors. I can passionately argue both ways with you. But the assumption that we make as people who work in public policy and healthcare is this: Republicans will talk about cutting these things, but they never do. That's actually just a baked-in assumption that we all make. Remember when George W. Bush was going to privatize Social Security? What did that last for 5 minutes? Big government programs are incredibly popular. So they don't really ever change them. I have Democratic friends in DC who will tell you, once it becomes an entitlement program, we're good to go. They'll never touch it. Trump is not like the other kids on the playground. He's not. Love him or hate him, and I'm guessing both sensations are in this room. He's just not a normal actor. This is a significant change to Medicaid. Is it back to 1965? No. But it's a big move in that direction. When Medicaid came out, you all know this, it was a true safety net program. 32-year-old men in Chicago didn't get Medicaid. If you were 32 years old and a guy in Chicago and able-bodied, you were told to get a damn job. Medicaid wasn't for you. It was for poor women with children and the disabled. It was a true bargain basement safety net program for the most vulnerable parts of society. It changed, it evolved, it grew. Now it's just a basic part of the American insurance function. Men are included, able-bodied men. Good, I'm not sorry, I'm not taking sides. I like insurance. I want you to have insured patients. I'm glad. But it's a significant change from 1965, right? Trump pushes it back in that direction. And that's a changed assumption that I will not make anymore, and you shouldn't. And I'm not just talking about Trump and Republicans. I'm talking about Democrats, Republicans. You should not assume now, whoever the president is, that these big entitlement programs are sacred cows. They're not. The precedent has been set. That's not a complaint, and it's not a compliment. It's just the truth. Now, you also need to understand that this happens over a long period of time. I said that to you earlier, but it's a big deal to understand that. Trump's not stupid. Most of these things don't happen until after the midterm elections. Those big two changes at the top, work requirements for the people of this community, eligibility determinations, those don't happen until January after the midterms. Those changes to the provider tax amounts, you know how it works, right? Illinois jacks up the provider tax on you, puts the money in the kitty, and then tells the federal government to match it, and then pays it back out. This is how we get a huge amount of increased money for Medicaid. That's going to be limited. That doesn't even, the limits on that, which are phased in over 6 and 7 years, they don't even begin until 2028. Trump will be back at Mar-a-Lago. It doesn't even begin till then. So deep breath. The implications are harsh, but they are already being mitigated and changed, and you have time to strategically adjust. Panic is not the right response here. Activity is. That's what I mean. Now, Scott mentioned this. The other big hit is to Obamacare. And you know how this worked, right? Obamacare has always, the insurance function in Obamacare, the exchange, has always had subsidies. They've always sweetened the deal with money. But at the beginning of COVID, they jacked it way up in an emergency law because, for good reason, they thought the whole damn thing was going to implode. And tens of millions of Americans concentrated in the hospitality industry lost their jobs. So we cranked up the subsidy in Obamacare, and my God, did it work. Look at the numbers. We went from 11 to 24 million people covered in the Obamacare exchange. Unprecedented growth, partly because of the subsidy, partly because of the layoffs, right? It was an emergency law. It expired last year, 2025. The reason we closed the government for 43 days is the Democrats said, I want to keep the emergency rate. Because it's working. I understand why they want to. I'm not criticizing them. Look at how well it worked, right? Republicans are like, no, that was an emergency law for COVID. It's over. We're going back to the old subsidy. That's what we fought over for 43 days. That's why the government closed. It's a good difference of opinion, but I want you to understand what it was. The problem is, because the subsidy has been massively reduced, the insurance carriers, a lot of them dropped out of the exchange, but the ones who stayed are cranking up, 40% of them are cranking up the premium by at least 20%. Now, Scott mentioned this will result in an increase in the uninsured in Chicagoland. Let me give you another bit of good news. And right now, as we're getting the numbers from the enrollment period, which is Illinois extended it to the end of the month, it ended for red states in the middle of the month, there was less dropout of insurance than we expected. What actually happened for a lot more people was they downgraded. So there are gold plans and silver plans and bronze plans in Obamacare. What happened in the greatest numbers is the gold people went to silver, the silver people went to bronze. It doesn't mean they won't come in here with more financial challenges and social determinant of health problems. They may be underinsured now in ways they were not. But the number of uninsured, raw uninsured, was not as bad as we thought it was going to be. We're already seeing nuance to the expectation. We will see more uninsured going forward. But again, keep in mind, right? It's a slower change than we thought. That's important and it's positive. This is what happened to the insurance companies. I know, no crocodile tears, but I still want you to understand it. Insurance companies had a great COVID. There's no better business model in America than a big insurance company during COVID. Because they were collecting all the premiums, and nobody wanted to go to the doctor or the hospital. That's a good business model. They made so much money. Kaiser Permanente, this is a provider-owned health plan, was making $5 billion a year in profit. UPMC in Pittsburgh, provider-owned health plan, was making $1 billion a year. I don't even have words for what United and CVS, Aetna, and Humana were making. They had to come up with new words for how much money they were making because it was so politically unattractive to make that much money during a pandemic. Pandemic's over, and now they get to pay for it. So what happened? A lot of pent-up demand. We didn't do a lot of surgeries that we needed to do during those years. Now they're all coming into the system. It's expensive. Did we get healthier in those 4 years? Did you? I didn't. I mean, you know, I was never that guy who was like, is it 5? Is it 5? Is it 5? Can I have a drink? 8 Zoom meetings, I was crawling to my bar. I've never had that much alcohol. Like, I got fat. I mean, you know, this is what happened. We didn't get better in COVID. We got heavier and sicker and older and more depressed, which means all of that utilization, all of that acuity is now baked into the system too. So medical loss ratios were skyrocketing for the insurance companies. That was already happening. All that money they made in COVID, oh, now it's your turn, you pay up. And then the government hit them right in the solar plexus with a giant cut to Medicare Advantage rates. So they were already like, and then, the government whacked them. This is a 1-2 punch and down to the mat. And they did not expect this. And this is their business model, by the way. You look at any major insurance company, with the exception of Cigna, Medicare Advantage is the whole bet they've made. You look at United, the commercial business at United is a tiny afterthought. That's a government insurance company. That's almost all their business is Medicare and Medicaid. So this was just a huge solar plexus hit, right? Now, what happens, Scott alluded to it, what happens when a big insurance company gets punched in the stomach? You get punched in the stomach. You're like, that's weird. Why did I get punched in the stomach? They punched United because they're going to try to pass the margin hit onto you. I'm not even picking on them. This is what everybody does. If you buy Nike tennis shoes, Janet, and Trump puts a 42% tariff on Vietnam, oh, I promise you, Nike's not going to be like, that's on me. I'll just 42% of my profit's gone. It's cool. I'll just put a different uniform for the University of Oregon football team every other game. Makes me crazy how much money they spend on those uniforms. Anyway, never mind. Right? No, you're gonna see it in the store, right? This is what everybody does. So what happened? Scott alluded to it, right? They jacked up denial rates. They jacked up prior authorization. Negotiations got uglier. They started changing the models. This has resulted, by the way, in a meltdown. It is a weekly story for me to show up at a provider like you and be told they kicked an insurance company out. I don't mean monthly, weekly I get these stories, weekly. I was driving up to Covenant in Saginaw, Michigan, called me in the rental car. I was like passing through Detroit. We kicked United out, just want to let you know. No more United. I was going to Genesis in Ohio. They kicked Humana out. I was going to St. Bernard's in Arkansas, Jonesboro, Arkansas State. They kicked United out. No more United, gone, no more. Common Spirit, the biggest not-for-profit health system of the country, kicked Humana out. No more Humana. I mean, these are radical changes to the market. By the way, you know what I'm hearing now? They pick on one that they don't like, stories. You know what I'm getting now? They kicked them all out. I was at Scripps in San Diego 2 months ago. They don't take Medicare Advantage anymore, except their own plan. That's San Diego. This is one of the towns where we invented the HMO, right? They don't take it anymore. Mayo Clinic takes no Medicare Advantage. Great Plains takes no Medicare Advantage. This is starting to happen. By the way, you know what that explains? Look at that bar on the end, 5.06%. That's the government freaking out. Oh God, we've melted the thing down. We got to throw some money in there because the whole market's breaking down. Nobody, by the way, nobody expected that was a harbinger of great salad days to come. Everybody in the insurance world that I talked to said that's a panic response because there are all these breakups happening. And you saw they just published the 2027 rates and they suck. It wasn't a harbinger of things to come. They were just trying to sweeten the deal for a year to stabilize the market. So what's the result? They leave markets. We're kicking them out. We're firing them. It's like the employee you want to fire and they quit. I'm firing you. No, I quit. Like they're leaving parts of Illinois before we can even get rid of them. I'm not selling. There are whole parts of the state of Illinois where they won't sell these plans now because they can't make any money. HMOs, look at the right-hand side. The growth engine of Medicare Advantage for the last decade and a half has been the PPO, the Preferred Provider Organization. Everybody loves the PPO. Every doctor in Chicago's in the network, all the hospitals, so much choice, so lovely. They can't control costs in that model. They've all reverted like a knee-jerk reaction back to the sort of California HMO. One group of doctors, one hospital, restricted network. I'm going to be all over you because I can't control costs otherwise. And Scott alluded to this one. They're investing in tech, specifically tech to not pay you. They have robots now. When you submit a claim, the robot's like, I don't think that's the claim. I think it's actually just pneumonia. The robots are downgrading your claims. So what is UI doing? You heard about the team, right? Getting more money. What are they doing? We're building robots to get more money. We're going to end in this weird world where you provide exceptional care, United insures people, and robots fight for money in a back room. But isn't even the worst scenario I can think of, honestly. Like, I'd rather that than you have to hire 300 more coders. most of whom don't particularly seem to like their jobs very much. We have a lot of turnover in those ranks, right? It's a tough job. I get it. So that's, you know, I'm not saying because I want people at UI to be unemployed. Let's be a phlebotomist. There's more satisfaction in that job, right? Let the robot fight it out. That's what we're doing, and I'm not sorry. I'm not. I don't think people in this room are going to lose their jobs. Doesn't bother me, right? All right. Look at this. People are always like, "You never bring us any good news." Really? 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 Feast your eyes. Feast your eyes. Look at that line. My goodness. You guys had a strike, so you got hit hard. You saw the numbers. But you looked like this. Because that was exogenous, right? That was not expected. But you looked like this. Now, people get mad at me. Hospitals get mad at me because that's a median. Remember 8th grade math? So I take the organization in Illinois making the most money, and I take the organization losing the most money, and I put a dot in the middle. That's the median. It's the middle of the range. So it's a little bit misleading. What would you guess is the average operating margin right now? Don't Google it. Guess. Average operating margin right now of an American hospital. 45. Thank you. Three. Good guess. Right? You're close. It ain't 7.5, but it ain't 0, which it was 2 years ago. We've gotten better. If you talk to Standard & Poor's and Fitch's and Moody's, if you talk to credit rating agencies, you know what they call this? A full recovery. From the financial people's perspective, we are in 2019. COVID's over, we're back. It doesn't mean we're perfect. We had a lot of problems in 2019. We had labor problems, we had supply problems, we had margin issues, we had physician issues. We're just back. That's what the credit rating agencies say. That's what this is. Now, keep in mind, I don't need to tell you this because you see this all over Illinois, 40% of American health systems are still losing money, 40%. In California, it's 60. So there are rougher markets. So don't understand the power of your margin. It's damn good. And it's not normal. A lot of people in Chicago, a lot of people in Illinois are losing money. Not as many as 2 or 3 years ago, but it's still rough, right? So just understand the good performance of the people in this room. Where you see the hit first from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, this is the canary in the coal mine. This is what our rural hospitals in Illinois, first and foremost. Look, most of Medicaid, you guys are a living example, most of Medicaid is spent in the city. 88% of Medicaid is spent in urban America because of the population density of places like this. Only 12% of Medicaid is spent on the farm, but it is often the only payment, right? So they'll get hit first. You'll see it first. Look at the bottom right. 14% of rural hospitals right now, if I showed you their balance sheet, you would say, how the hell is this organization employing nurses and turning on lights? That's how bad they are. That's before the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. 14% of rural hospitals, if I showed you their financials right now, you would say, I think this place is closed. They're still somehow getting by. But now they're going to get hit over time, over a long period of time, with these One Big Beautiful Bill Act cuts. Right? So what does that create? A vacuum. Remember what I said to you at the beginning? This is a vacuum that's being created. And you know what? We are filling it. You can't fill every vacuum. There's a lot to do at UI. I've seen the list. It's an impressive list. Outpatient growth, new beds, moving away from semi-private rooms. You've got a lot to do. Fixing those grades. You've got great work coming, right? But you can't fill every vacuum. You will close. You know that. You will fill some vacuums. You have a remarkably strong mission to help the people of this community. But you're not going to be able to fill every vacuum, and you know it. If you do that, you will close. But you'll fill some of them, and these are health systems filling the rural vacuum. When I go to Common Spirit out west, they're literally rotating patients back to rural hospitals, and they're stabilized. They're sending surgeons out to those hospitals. Half of rural hospitals have stopped delivering children. Almost half of rural hospitals have stopped doing chemo. That's weird. Rural hospitals are supposed to be the grocery store of the town, right? but you don't do babies or cancer? That's like you going to the grocery store and they don't have bread, milk, eggs, and cheese. You'd be like, that's not a grocery store, that's a gas station. Right? That's what they feel like now. A lot of them have gone ED only. These patients are just going to come into cities twice as sick and twice as broke. Right? So that's why we're filling the vacuum, and we are filling it. This is actually working. It's not perfect, but it's working. I'll just give you 3 examples. I could give you 50, because this is what we do. We fill that vacuum. Right? Hub and spoke systems with rural hospitals. Okay, the other big hit to the basic provision of care that's happened is what? The drugstores. I mean, do you see the irony in this? Remember when I told you the disruptors are themselves disrupted? These guys were supposed to be disruptors. Remember? CVS Aetna bought Oak Street here in Chicago. They were putting primary care physicians in drugstores. They were going to disrupt UI. They're going to take your primary care and make it more accessible by the drugstore. Walgreens, another Chicago player, right? What were they doing? They bought Village MD. What were they going to do? Put primary care physicians in drugstores, disrupt UI, provide primary care more accessibly. And now they're all in free fall. Like they disrupted themselves. They didn't disrupt you. They knocked themselves over. Rite Aid's gone. Gone. I live in Ohio. There is no Rite Aid. I drive by the buildings. They have that lease sign and Carol, the realtor, and there's like the weird thing on the brick, you know, that shaped like a Rite Aid. You know what I mean? I was a Rite Aid guy. You know, you get used to a drugstore, you know, where everything is, how it's lit, in the creepy dark area, the pressure cuffs. You know what I mean? Like now I have to go to Walgreens. I'm like, it's all dim, and where are the Christmas decorations? Anyway, it's disruptive. Rite Aid's gone. CVS closed 900 stores in the last 2 years. Walgreens is essentially bankrupt. It's being split into 5 parts by private equity. What the hell happened? Where did these titans go? Where did these disruptors go? Why wasn't this UI? Why was this CVS? A couple of things happen. First of all, we misunderstand the price of drugs. Don't get me wrong. I'll show you some drug prices that are outrageous. Drug prices are an issue. But the simple truth is most Americans misjudge the overall issue. Everybody in this room who takes a drug, I bet the vast majority of you are taking a generic or a biosimilar. I have peanut butter in my veins. Like I've been taking a statin since I was 32. You think I take Lipitor? I haven't seen an actual Lipitor pill in decades. I take Frafa. If you can't pronounce the name of your drug, I promise you it's a generic, right? If I want to see real Lipitor, I have to go to like the Henry Ford Museum. Like, oh, look at that. Look, I didn't even know it was that color, you know? It's like next to the Edsel, you know what I mean? We don't take these drugs. We take cheap drugs. These guys don't actually make much of a margin on that business. And the PBMs beat the crap out of them, the pharmacy benefit management companies. And what do they bet the farm on? What was their multi-billion dollar spend? Primary care physicians. Look, primary care is the heart and soul of UI. It's the heart and soul of any healthcare system. This is not a criticism of primary care, but we lose money on them. Do you remember, how many of you went to business school? Show me your hands. All right. You remember the first day of business school when they teach you the loss leader lesson? Remember? They're like, what's your name? Derek. They're like, Derek, why does a bank have a checking account, Derek? They lose money on every single one. Why do they have a checking accounts then, Derek? They want to get your ass in there. Everybody needs a checking account, so you go to open a checking account. They lose money on that, but then you do your home loan and your car loan, and you save money for your kids' education. Then they make money on that. It's called a loss leader. They lose money on something, but it leads to profit, right? This is how primary care works. Everybody in this room knows it. And they hemorrhaged money. They lost billions on that investment. Right? You could have talked them out of it. They needed you. But this is a hell of a disruption. I don't know about you. I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is our American folk. 24% of statin users, you can extrapolate that to pretty much every drug. The drugstore closes, they're like, oh, I guess I don't need the drug. No, Bob, you still have high cholesterol. You just don't have Rite Aid anymore. People just stop taking their drugs. Like, oh, cool. I guess I don't have that problem anymore. No, you just don't have that drugstore anymore. Like, you need to go to another drugstore, right? My pharmacist is a bigger part of my primary care than my primary care physician. Isn't it for you? Like, I see if I'm lucky and diligent, and I mean really lucky and really diligent, I see my primary care physician once a year. If I'm really good. I see my pharmacist all the time, and he's chatty. He like comments on my weight. Did you gain weight? I'm like, you know what? Give me the pills. Your color's weird. You sleeping? You good, man? Like, you just give me the damn drugs. Like, right? I mean, it's, he won't shut up. I lose my pharmacist? That's not good. That's a downgrade in my primary care. Would be, I bet it would be for everybody in this room too, right? So that's a vacuum. Rite Aid is gone. CVS is in trouble. Walgreens is nearly bankrupt. This is a vacuum, ladies and gentlemen. Who's filling it? There are no vacuums. Somebody always fills them. Who's filling this vacuum? Of course, Amazon, right? Amazon. They'll happily bring you the drugs. Like, oh, I'll bring you the drugs. They have PillPack. They have their own pharmacy. They bought that years ago. It didn't work very well, by the way. They didn't get much market share. Boy, they're getting some market share now. Everybody here is going to have to get the Ring doorbell, by the way. You think people are stealing stuff off your porch now? Wait till they figure out there are drugs out there. You will never get a package again. But is this the same? Is this an equivalency? Is the Amazon driver going to tell me I've gained weight? No, he's not. I don't even see him. Is he going to tell me my color's off and wonder if I'm sleeping? Maybe I'm having a weird drug interaction? He's not going to tell me that. He doesn't know enough to tell me that, and I don't talk to him. That's a loss, folks. That's a downgrade. Which means the other investor is you. Every health system I work with, you, Rush, Cook County, everyone, by the way, is investing money in retail pharmacy right now. Everybody. It's not a surprise. We have a vacuum to fill. Your patients need their drugs. So we're opening up and expanding our retail pharmacies. Scott mentioned it. We're also doing specialty pharmacy in 340B. So Kismet, we're going to do it all together, pharmacy strategy. Good, good. I'm glad. I'd rather you do it than Amazon. You're going to tell me I've gained weight. They're not. I need this stuff. We need this stuff, right? I don't want the downgrade. I want you to win, not Amazon, because you're better, frankly. Nothing against Amazon. I like their stuff. But this is a downgrade. All right, I don't need to tell you this, but the other canary in the coal mine in the cities are academic medical centers, which is a little weird. Now, you guys know this, but a lot of people in Chicago don't know this. Everybody's still stuck in this mentality of 10 years ago, which is the academic medical centers make all the money. The glittering towers of technology, these beautiful buildings and beautiful cities. That's how we think of academic medical centers in America. Glittering towers of technology that make all the money. They have the best brands, right? That's still true. You still have the best brands. But the idea that you make more than community hospitals hasn't been true for a decade. Cuts to medical education funding. And then, frankly, COVID really killed it. I mean, you know this. And it happened less here than Northwestern, right? Where are most academic medical centers? Big cities. Where did the workforce leave the most in COVID? Big cities, right? When I go to Northwestern, I love Northwestern. Great brand, beautiful buildings, nice docks, you know. Last time I was there, I walked around that medical center on the lake. I got to tell you, one-third of the lights are on in those buildings. Nobody's in those buildings. I'm talking about the office buildings that surround Northwestern. All those people are in Evanston and Lake Forest and Naperville, and they're not in there anymore. The academic medical center is built on the premise of, if I build it, they will come because I'm in the big city. But if everybody moves to the suburbs and works out of their basement, of course, for you guys, what happens? Because you serve an incredibly needy population, they didn't leave. So I see these numbers much harsher at a place like Northwestern than I do UI. I know, you're like, thanks, great. We get the population too poor to go to the suburbs, right? But that's true. That's the simple truth of it, right? The big academics I work with in towns like San Francisco, New York, and Chicago have taken a giant hit. You build it, they didn't come because they don't work here anymore. which means what are the academics up to that I work with? They are, and you're going to be doing this too, big investments in outpatient, big investments in surgery centers, investments in urgent care centers, investment in primary care. If you look at Northwestern right now, what are they spending money on? They're going to the suburbs. I've seen this in Philadelphia, I've seen it in New York, I've seen it in Dallas, I've seen it in San Francisco. The academics are like, I build it and they're not coming. So now I'm gonna have to go get it. And these community hospitals are not used to having to compete with your brands. So they're pissed. But that's a huge change in the competition that I'm seeing. They also, they live off of 340B. I would too, but I have academic medical centers that the only thing they make money on now is selling drugs. There's an academic medical center, I won't name them, but you probably know who I'm talking about. They make $1 billion a year on 340B, billion with a B. I work with an academic in Tennessee that makes half a billion a year on 340B. I mean, they'll tell you behind closed doors, we're basically a drugstore with like a hospital wrapped around it. I like it, I take the money too. I don't want the rebate program. I'm glad that we've stopped it. Good, some good lobbying done there. Keep fighting. But I don't want to be the only thing that makes money at UI. It's a political target. Get all you can from it. But it can't be the only thing that works in Nashville, right? We're going to have other stuff that does well. All right. Let's talk about these insurance companies. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it because, you're not going to cry any crocodile tears, but look at the medical loss ratios coming out of COVID. Look at this. You had a good COVID, now you get to pay, right? Illinois is older and sicker. Lots of pent-up demand, lots of stuff we didn't do. You're going to pay for it. But look what happened. Look at the blues on the right-hand side. -3% margins now. Look, insurance companies never have great operating margins. This is one of the myths of American healthcare. People think United's the Fortune number 5, which they are, by the way. So they think they must have these giant operating margins. United's operating margins are terrible. Single digits at best, sometimes with a 0.0 in front of them. But they don't lose money. The government requires insurance companies to hold an ocean of cash because they're insurance companies. So they put that into the stock market and they make returns. That's how they make all their money. That's it. I've just given you the insurance business. But they're not supposed to lose money because what that makes them vulnerable to is incredibly vulnerable. If there's an exogenous shock that crashes the stock market right now, that's an existential question now. If they're making 0.2% margins, they'll ride it out. If they're losing 3%, every CEO's head will roll. They'll all get fired. That's not normal. It's not normal for them to be losing 3% at the Blues. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan lost $1.7 billion last year. $1.7 billion. That was the worst loss of the Blues, but they all lost money. No crocodile tears. But you need to understand this, right? This has strategy implications for us. Insurance companies are the cops. We might not love them, but they're the cops. They're the ones who are supposed to attack inflation. They don't always do a great job of it, by the way. Right? We can agree on that. But they're the ones who are supposed to attack inflation for the employers, their customers. The cop's not walking the beat. The cop is back in a dark room licking his wounds right now. They're pulling back in all facets of their business. They're trying literally not to grow right now because the margin's so bad in some of their fundamental businesses. Humana sold more Medicare Advantage, had to go back to Wall Street and apologize. What a world. I sold more of my core business and my margin went down. That's something you can relate to, but that's not normal for insurance, right? Look at the inflation. This is the problem, right? Go to the Midwest Business Group on Health. I do their meeting every year. They meet in the Marriott Marquis downtown Chicago. It's an angry room. I do that every summer. I do that meeting. You should come and listen to these guys. I mean, they're livid. 9%? When everything else in America is 3%? I can't keep doing this with you, right? I can't keep paying 9% when I compete with China and Singapore and Canada. I can't do it. Now, they always do. They always say this, it's not sustainable, and then they cough up the dough every time, by the way. But these aren't good rooms to be in, these employers. I know you feel stretched, but 9% inflation in benefit spend of the country. And a lot of this is because the insurance companies have imploded. They're not minding the store. So let's pick out the ones that are the most egregious and talk about the vacuums created or the changes. GLP-1s, obviously, right? You all knew that. This is a huge part of that 9% inflation. Everybody wants to take those drugs, including me. Behavioral health, and then there's a little bit of a sign of light and some insurance changes that I'll show you. Let's talk about the GLP-1s. This is what I mean when I say we have a mistaken impression of the impact of drug prices. Drug prices matter hugely in some areas. Look at the things on the right. But overall, utilization is a bigger problem in drugs than prices are. Prices bounce along and sort of come down because so many things go generic or biosimilar, right? But the utilization keeps going up. As a society, Americans take a lot of drugs. And that's a harder thing to control, believe it or not, than price. Now, look at 47%. 47% of the massive increase in drug spending, 47% are those weight loss drugs. 47%. Now look at the right. No surprise to anybody here, of the blockbuster drugs in America, the two biggest are GLP-1s. Look at that. Look at that spend. Humira, the middle one's the only one going down. The only one where inflation is being reined in. What happened? What the hell happened to Humira? That's a popular drug. What happened? You know. They came out with a biosimilar. How many UI physicians changed their prescribing habits the minute that drug hit the market? Don't lie to me. Not one. Not one doctor in your medical staff, because they're busy and stressed and they got a million other things to worry about, right? They're not just going to get the little piece of paper out. Oh, God, there's a biosimilar. I'll tell Mrs. Jones. She's happy with her drugs. It's not my problem. You know who did this? The insurance companies. The insurance company said to the doctors, I'm not paying you for that damn drug anymore. There's a biosimilar that costs a fraction that's the same drug. And they're like, oh, damn it, fine. We don't always love the insurance companies, but that's what I mean when I say they're the cops. The doctors didn't change their behaviors to save us all that money as a society. It was the damn insurance companies. They were like, no more. Not paying you. That part works. This is just an unprecedented. This is a perfect storm. When the pharmaceutical companies talk about a blockbuster drug, you know what they normally refer to? 4 to 5% of people in Illinois want to take it. That's a blockbuster. Not half. Half of Illinois wants to take these drugs. Half of us. We've never seen anything like that. Nothing. None of the employers want to pay for it. They want the insurance companies to do the hard work for them. Everybody's trying to come up with systems. The insurance companies have no idea what to do, by the way. I talk to them all the time. You should see these guys. I talk to people who make 10 times my income. What are you going to do about this? They look back at me. Like Bambi. One guy was like, I don't know, what do you think I should do? I was like, really? How many billions of dollars do you have to have before you come up with a better answer than that? Like, you're going to ask me the question back? You're the insurance company. So it's a vacuum, yes? We have a vacuum with GLP-1s. Everybody wants it, nobody wants to pay for it. So guess who's stepping into the maw? The pharmacy benefit management companies. They're like, step aside. I'll take this one. Because nobody else is fixing it. It's a vacuum. So the PBMs are like, I'll take a shot at this. Let's look at Caremark. I'll give you the drug, Mrs. Jones. I'll give you the drug. I'm not going to ration you. But you're going to have to get a nutritionist. You're going to have to get a weight coach and an exercise coach. You have to go to the gym. You have to change your diet. I'll give you the drug, but I'm not going to give it to you like candy. And then 6 months you stop taking it and you gain all the weight back and I get nothing. What did I just describe to you? What is that? Say it. Rationing. It's rationing. It's just rationing in a way that they think most Americans will be like, okay. Which is what I say when I see it. Okay, that makes sense. You shouldn't just take the drug. You should change your diet. You should not be food addicted. You should exercise more. We all should. I'm not picking on you or me. I'm just saying, most people look at this and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. It's a form of rationing that they believe America will accept without getting pitchforks and torches out. They're probably right. I don't know if it'll work, but it's vacuum filling. Nobody's fixing it. So they're stepping in saying, I got an idea. We'll come up, some people will get the drug, but they're going to have to do other changes. It limits the demand. You follow? All right, behavioral health is the other one. Look, you guys see this every day, every hour, every minute. But it's bad. The spending is nowhere near GLP-1s, not even close. Maybe it would be if we could treat everybody, but it's not even close. The numbers are scary, as you know. So the clinicians in this room will know this, but the depression scale we use in the clinical setting is the PHQ-9, right? So when they ask you, when you go to the doctor's office, and they say, are you blue? Have you had suicidal ideation? They're trying to give you a number. They're trying to give you a number on the PHQ-9 scale of depression. There are essentially 5 levels. There are 10 million sublevels. Don't worry about it. But there are 5 levels. Not depressed. Good. Situationally depressed. What's that? What's situational depression? What is it? Your dog died. Your dad died. You got fired. You got divorced. You're really, really sad, but you're not going to go on an antidepressant. You're going to suck it up for 6 months, and then you're going to be better. You're not clinically depressed. You follow? And then there are 3 levels of depression that are called clinical. That is a massive range, by the way, from moderately severe to severe. So this is like light antidepressants to suicide watch. But UI is only responsible clinically for those 3 groups, where it's called clinical depression. Something's wrong that's not going to be fixed when you get a new puppy. You follow? It's not going to go away. Something's misfiring in your head. So what would you get? So when we compare, I get these numbers from University of Michigan, Public Health. They're good, very good numbers. When we compare cohorts, we do this in cohorts. So you compare cohorts to see what level of mental, spending you have to do, right? I'm in the 55 to 65 cohort. All in, men, women, rich, poor, black, white, all 50 states, what would you guess is the percentage estimate of my cohort that is clinically depressed right now? Very high, right? It's not, it's 5. It was 4 before COVID. It tripled to 12 in the heat of COVID because we got really sad and lonely and intoxicated. And then it went back down to 5. What does that tell you about my age cohort? Yeah, but the psychiatrists use the term resilient, right? We're good. We're not your problem. We're in a good place. We're like, yeah, okay, cool. We grew up before social media, completely, right? So, we went outside and climbed trees and crap. You know what I mean? Like, there was no helicopter. I love the helicopter parenting. I wish I could show you a picture of my mom dropping me at college. She barely slowed the station wagon down. She was like, she flicked us, get out, get out. See you in 4 years. She doesn't know what my major was. She still doesn't know. She came back to graduation. Hey, how you doing? Get in the damn, get your crap. There's no, I left the house at 9 a.m. in the summer. I came back at dinner. The pedophile chased me around. I mean, there was no helicoptering. So we're in a better place. My kids are in the cohort which is 18 to 26. So this is a cohort in behavioral health. It's at the beginning of college to early workforce. What would you guess that one is? Right now, estimated. Half. 52. 52. You're right. 52. 52! More than half of them are clinically depressed. I mean, remember, it's a giant range. It can be light. It can be really bad, but it's a huge range. 52. This is who you're hiring. This is who I'm hiring. These sad sacks are going to have to care for us in our old age. This is a bad news, right? We're going to have to get them together. So it's bad, right? So we're spending a ton on this. This is a vacuum, and we can't fill it because we don't have enough psychiatrists. We don't have enough social workers, right? Not for this tsunami. And when you go to those conferences and there's that guy who's like, well, every generation has its struggles. No, Phil. That's not what we're talking about here. My generation's 5. This is 52. That's not every generation has its struggles. That is a crisis, right? Which you are trying to clean up at UI. I know, every day. But we don't have enough, so it's a vacuum. So what's happened? When I go to these tech conferences, you know what all everybody's talking about are technology responses to this problem. Virtual therapy, right? Clinical decision support tools in the ER. AI-enhanced, customized behavioral health data tracking so I can get to the depression much faster than I would otherwise, right? I mean, it's fantastic stuff. I don't know that 75% of it will work, But there's a hell of a lot of innovation going on right now. It's a vacuum. We don't have enough. And we're trying to treat it, so the tech companies are trying to step into the vacuum. All right, last but not least, this is the one little glimmer that's going on the insurance front. I just want to make you aware of it because it will matter. Certainly on the commercial side, it'll matter, which is not a huge book of business for UI, but you need to understand this is going on. The major insurance experiment of the last 10 years, 15 years on the commercial side is what? High deductible health plans, yes? My deductible 20 years ago was like $70. I didn't even know what it was, I didn't care. I now have a $7,000 deductible. And by the way, I'm signing up for the low deductible plan in my company. $7,000 is the low deductible plan, right? So I pay $7,000 before I see any, for my family, before I see any insurance. Why? Well, first of all, it was designed by benefits people so they could offload a lot of the inflation onto us. Let's just be honest, right? This is I'm sharing the inflation with you, mom and pop. I'm not just going to suck it up myself as a company and the employer. You're paying for it too. We're together in this. So they're sharing the pain. It's also supposed to make all of us into shoppers. If I give you a $7,000 deductible, by God, aren't you going to be like, which is the right outpatient surgery center? Which is the right primary care physician? I should take this drug, not that drug, right? We're all going to become great consumers of healthcare. Did that work? No, not even a little bit. Nobody shopped. Not one of you. I'm an economist and I didn't shop. I was like, you should see me. My behavior changed not at all. $7,000 deductible. My doctor's like, go here. I'm like, okay, okay, doc, is that your friend from medical school? I don't know. I just lump along like I always did. It didn't work. It worked as an inflation adjuster. It certainly didn't work as a shopping enhancer. So now the big experiment is variable copays. Kill the deductible. Look at the upper left-hand side. These have either no deductible or very low deductibles. It's back to 20 years ago. All the out-of-pocket comes in the moment. Look at my iPhone here. If I want to go to that imaging center, it's $200. If I want to go to this one that they want me to go to, it's $15. Now I'm going to make you into a shopper. You're going to have to cough up the dough in the moment like you do at 7-Eleven. And the idea is two things. They're trying to encourage you to go to the places they think are better. By the way, it's not cynical. They're not picking the crappiest, cheapest, worst ones. They generally pick the ones with the best quality numbers. They know if they screw up the image, they're going to have to pay for it again. So they're trying to send you to places that they think are better. More access, they get you in faster, better service, good grades. Grades are important, as Scott said, right? The other thing they're trying to do is they're trying to separate all these little places around greater Chicagoland that have your name on them from your brand. Don't tell me it's UI. Don't tell me it's Rush. Don't tell me it's Northwestern. Don't tell me it's Endeavor. I want to know those doctors on that street corner. Because as we all know, it's not the same. Just because I call it UI doesn't mean it's every level of service is exactly the same as every other part of UI. That's probably true of Starbucks, but we haven't achieved that level of uniformity. And they're trying to pick that out. Those are the good doctors over there. Don't tell me it's UI. It's those doctors I'm interested in. I don't know if it'll work. It's very small, but it's growing fast. When I go to that Midwestern Business Group on Health meeting at the Marriott Marquis, by the way, this is always the first question they ask me. Tell me about those variable copay plans. Because they are desperate. Because they're paying 9% inflation and they're looking for any solutions that they can find. So they always ask me about it. But it's only 7% of employers last year. We think maybe 18% this year. Watch for it. What does it mean? Be careful of the numbers. If they start grading every imaging center, every outpatient surgery center, every urgent care center at UI, I want those grades to be good. Not just the C's and B's going to A's overall, which is good work, as Scott said. But this matters too, especially if these grow. All right, I'll finish up. I only have a few minutes. I'll finish up with, this is the reduction in trust that we've seen. So this is us. These are 12 years of Gallup numbers. I like Gallup's numbers. They have pretty good numbers. I've seen a lot worse. This has happened across the board in America, by the way. So the nurses have dropped to 82. That's still literally the best thing in our country, by the way. So those nurse leaders who stood up earlier, thank you. You are the most trusted human beings in America. Better than, more than firefighters. More people trust their nurse than trust their minister. That's great. Keep it. Hold on to it. It's down, by the way, though. I don't like that. It's down, uniformly down. It's just not down very much. But it used to go up and down, up and down, up and down. Now it just goes down. But it's still a hell of a thing, right? We can hang our hat on that. Physicians are dropped into the low 70s, high 60s. That's a little bit more troubling, to be honest with you. It's not catastrophic, but it's notably down. Look at the size of that bar, right? And the physician's supposed to be the patient whisperer. I mean, anybody who's spent time in a hospital, I have, knows that the nurse is the key relationship, you know? You want to get your drugs, you want to sleep a little bit, you want to get your medicine, it's the nurse. But it's the doctor, my primary care physician is supposed to be my whisperer. He's my guide to all things healthcare, right? And if he's dropping big time, that's concerning, because who's then going to take his place? Vacuums are always filled. Who's taken his place? Right? Scary, right? Hospitals, you've dropped into the 50s. You know, you're a big organization. You're seen as having money. You're seen as having a big savings, you know, big endowment. You're seen, you know, for better, whether it's fair or not, big organizations, when we want to insult something in America, we put big in front of it. Big pharma, big tech, big lawyer, big this, right? So you're big, so you get more crap. But it bothers me because it's political power lost, right? When your lobbyists in D.C. were warning Team Trump, don't you touch Medicaid, they laughed in our faces. You don't have that kind of power anymore. And they were right. That's a loss of political power. We managed some good wins, though. That, you know, I mean, it was a judge who made the decision, but not having the 340B thing go through, Scott's right. That was a big deal, right? We still win some, but that's a loss of political power. Everybody's always hated the drug companies and the insurance companies, so, you know, whatever. They hate them more. I hate you more. I hated you before. I double hate you now, right? And I just so you know I'm not picking on you. Everything in America is down. Where would you guess the media is? 28 in the Gallup numbers. More people like United. I want you to think about that for a second. Higher education. I mean, this is also a university. Where would you guess higher education is? 38. Just above the drug companies. Way below you. The Ivy League, in the wake of the Israel protests, 15. 15% of Americans think the Ivy League is excellent or good now. 15. That's a world turned upside down. And I see it. I'm on the board of a private school in Ohio, an elite school that sends a lot of kids to the Ivy League. I got to tell you, it's dropped. You know, a kid who 5 years ago would have been like, I'm going for Harvard, is like, I'd rather go to Ohio State. I see it all the time. It matters, right? It matters to us. What does it mean? They're not, if I don't trust my physician, what happens? I'm not going to take my drugs. I'm certainly not going to lose weight. I'm not going to go to the surgeon he thinks is good. And I'm going to punch a nurse in the face because I don't trust you anymore, and I'm mad. Is this a problem? Yes, it's a problem. Look at the bottom right. If I lose my primary care relationship, overall in America, you lose your primary care relationship, 4% jump in mortality, 4% increase in ED visits, 3% increase in admissions. Don't tell me there's something out there that's better. I have hard numbers. There's not. We have lost something. It's worse. It's not a replacement. Whatever the hell it is they're doing that's not trusting their doctor, it is not working. I have hard numbers that it's not working. And you know what they're up to, and a lot of this is burnout. I love the engagement improvement here, by the way. That was my favorite slide of Scott's slides. Because burnout's a big problem. You think your patients don't know? You think they don't know when they interact with a burned out doctor or nurse or pharmacist? You think they don't know? I live on Delta Airlines. You think I can't recognize a burned out flight attendant? I don't even need a full second. Burned out. That one's nice. I'll give my coat to that one. Right? You know instantly. You have a bad interaction, then you're mad, then they're in a worse mood, then the next interaction's worse. You know how it's this vicious cycle. You know how it works. So we don't fix it without fixing the burnout problem. So those engagement improvements, I got to tell you, that is a home run for you. Don't undercount that. And what they do, where do they go? 52% of Americans, look at this is where they go, they don't go to the doctor. 52% of Americans, it's not just that they read about something, they actually tried it. That they got on social media about their health. You know, like drinking bleach. That's a good one, right? Look at this, my kids. 25% of adults under 30 are using an AI chatbot at least once a month. What should I do, robot? I mean, you know how these things are built, right? Do you understand this? Do you know how these apps are built? They're built to basically tell you what you want to hear. They're built to keep you happy. If I ask ChatGPT like 2 or 3 questions, by the 3rd question, it's like, you're a very sexy man. You don't need to lose any weight. You look good, Ford. You look good. I'm like, thanks, robot. Like, my doctor, I walked in, he's like, every time you come in here, you've swollen. That's what he said. That's a quote. You've swollen. The robot's not gonna tell me I've swollen, right? So we're not replacing it with something good. It's not good enough, I'm sorry, it's not. I'm just telling you. It's not that I'm a Luddite and I hate technology. It's just not replacing a doctor and a nurse. I'll finish with this. We've tried a whole bunch. I usually pick on the nurses, but I'll pick on the doctors now because we're experimenting with all these different ways over decades of employing physicians, right? And your engagement numbers are up. Fantastic. But this is an ongoing experiment, right? Most physicians take a W-2 now. They take a job. They want to go to soccer games. Like it's not the physician of 1955 hanging a shingle in Duluth. That's gone. That world is gone, it's not bad. It's just gone. That's just one of those changes that has happened so slowly, we missed it, right? Most physicians are just corporate Joes and Janes like the rest of us. But there's a new entrant into the marketplace that I wanted to mention to you, and it's these guys. Of all people, the wholesalers. This is the drug distribution business, by the way. McKesson, Cardinal, and Cencora own it. Every drug on your shelves, every drug in your hands right now passes through the hands of these 3 companies. And what are they up to? Employing physicians in the thousands. This is new. This is brand new. You got to be aware of it, right? We've seen private equity. We've seen big physician groups. We've seen hospitals and health systems. We've seen it all, and we're still seeing it all in Chicagoland. But this is a new one. McKesson's going after oncologists and eye doctors. Cardinal's much more focused on urology and GI, and Cencora and McKesson are basically fighting it out for the same business. They'll probably fail, by the way. Physicians are hard to manage, as you know. This will probably flop, but it's a big move. It's thousands of doctors. So I just want you aware of it, right? This is another vacuum that's being changed. And I'll finish with this. The AI stuff doesn't bother me as much. All the boards I work with are terrified of it. They all think it's Skynet and Terminator and, But look, what are the 2 fastest growing apps in healthcare? In artificial intelligence. Documentation, ambient documentation, the nurse talks and the robot writes it down, puts it in the medical record that nobody ever reads, right? And what? Revenue cycle, billing and coding. What did I just name? Nurses? The 2 greatest sources of misery in your job. Do you think I'm sorry that the robots are going to do more of it? Good. I don't want the robot to read the book for me or write my paper. I like reading and writing. I want it to wash the damn dishes. This is the equivalent of that. Let the robot fight it out with United. Let the robot put the stuff in the medical record that sadly nobody reads. I don't care. No nurse is going to lose her job. None. We don't have enough nurses. You think I'm worried about this? I'm excited. The birth rate's way down. You know that, right? Look at this. Look at the second and 3rd tier colleges and universities in Illinois. I'm not saying that as an insult. Northwestern's always going to get the cream of the crop. University of Chicago is always going to get the cream of the crop. They're never going to have a problem. But that's not where most of us go. Most of us go to places that take 80 and 90% of applicants. That enrollment is down 20 and 30%. It's not COVID. There are no kids. I'm not sorry. We're going to need them, right? And this could probably solve a lot of our labor issues over time. I was at Vanderbilt. Last story, I was at Vanderbilt, and they got a big donation from a box maker. Literally makes cardboard boxes. He made a fortune in COVID because we shipped so much stuff. So he gave Vanderbilt tens of millions of dollars. And he went out for the feel good, like the big check, you know what I mean? To the box factory. This is the CEO of Vanderbilt. He's like, Ford, it's the size of a football field and there were 4 humans in there. It's just robots making boxes, bending cardboard, gluing. He's like, and boy, do those 4 people have a good job. If one of them doesn't show up, it melts into the earth. But then I went back to Vanderbilt and walked around, and it was back to 1962. Look at all these people walking around, moving things from this shelf to that shelf, right? He's like, look, Vanderbilt's never going to be a box factory. UI is never going to be a box factory. But we can't be the first episode of General Hospital forever either. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that because we're going to lose quality. You won't lose quality. It'll be better. But I'm not worried about it. Last but not least is, remember this. You're not going anywhere. America's only going to get older and sicker. Illinois is only going to get older and sicker. My God, do they need you. I love it when I go to these conferences and there's always that one guy. Well, the hospital of the future is no hospital. Is it, Phil? Is it? Have you been to the villages in Florida? Because that's the whole country in 15 years, right? I promise you we're going to need a hospital with a roof and a doctor in it and a nurse. Well, we'll have the hospital at home. Really? So my nurses who won't work in my glittering outpatient surgery center are going to drive to your creepy ass house. I'll just hold my breath on that labor model, right? You are going to be desperately needed. You are going to work out the structural things that Scott so well painted for you. But don't ever mistake that you will grow. You will grow because they will have to grow. They will need you. Thanks very much.
All right. Tough act to follow. Give it up one more time for Ford Coles, please. Thank you for that enlightening presentation. Okay, so we are going to break for a short break. So you have 5 minutes for a brisk break. But wait, pause, freeze. It doesn't start yet. 1 second. If you have not had a chance to sign in on the notes section on your table or you came in later, please make sure, just one per table. I know we collected some. Add your name, your user ID, and your email address, and then we'll collect them. Your 5 minutes starts now. We'll get started back promptly at 10:45. Thank you. All right, well, it's 10:48. Again, sorry for the shorter break. If you still need to stand or move around, please feel free to do so. I know the restrooms are heavily occupied also. But we will begin with the next part of the programming. So we just heard Ford Coles speak to the state of the industry. And it's very important to zoom in on what's happening here at home. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the stage Lauren Krause from Government Relations.
All righty. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Krause, and I am the Director of Government Relations for UI Health. So I advocate for the hospital and our clinics and Miles Square and our 7 health science colleges on the local, state, and federal level. And I was invited here today to give you all a little government relations update. So I will start by building on some of the federal insights that Ford shared with us, and then we will look at the state side and some state session forecasting. And then I wanted to tie into the LDI theme of resource sharing, so I'll share a little bit with you about the resources that I use on the government relations front, and then also share with you some resources that you could use if you are interested in having an impact in healthcare policy with our elected officials. And I don't think there will be time for a formal Q&A at the end of the presentation, but I will share with you my contact information, and then I will also be around following my presentation if you have any questions or if you would like to chat further on anything that I present on. So on the federal front, we will start with an appropriations update. This was a much more dramatic update, like 24 hours ago, when the federal government was partially shut down. But as of yesterday afternoon, all of our federal agencies are open for business and funded for the remainder of FY26, with the exception of the Department of Homeland Security. DHS has been given only 2 weeks of funding, which at this point I think is like 9 or 10 days. And this 2 weeks of funding is to put pressure on Congress to negotiate changes to ICE authority. In the wake of some of the ICE activity that we've seen in Minnesota, Congress is wanting to put some restrictions on ICE enforcement. So in the next 2 weeks or 10 days, Congress will be working on those changes, but everyone else, including the Department of Health and Human Services, which we care most about, is open for business. And included in HHS's FY26 budget were some key federal or healthcare policy extenders. The biggest one that I think is most exciting for all of us here is the extension of telehealth waivers. So some of the waivers that we have been enjoying since COVID have been extended through December of 2027. In addition to telehealth, there is also Congress is kicking the can down the road when it comes to DSH cuts, disproportionate share hospital funding. So that is all in place until 2028. And then hospital at home waivers are also continued until 2030. So now Congress is turning to FY27 funding efforts, and they are really focused on affordability. Congress has had several hearings on affordability. They had a bunch of insurance execs for House Ways and Means Committee hearing a couple weeks ago. There was a hearing yesterday on waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid and the Medicare programs. And so we will continue to see conversations in the federal space on how to make healthcare more affordable, especially as we approach the next election. We heard some insights from Ford on the impact of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or H.R. 1, but I wanted to share with you what we are anticipating or estimating to be the impact of H.R. 1 here in Illinois. So the Medicaid program in Illinois accounts for 17% of the state's budget, of the state's general revenue fund. And Illinois brings in $20 billion from the federal government to fund our Medicaid program. Some of the changes in H.R. 1 that will impact Medicaid eligibility will affect, in particular, the ACA expansion population, so the single childless adults. And that population alone brings in $7 billion to our state for our Medicaid program. So our state is facing a significant fiscal impact. It is over the course of several years, so we have some time, the state has some time to plan, but this will put a big strain on our state budget, and certainly something that is top of mind for our state policy makers as well. But a bit of good news from the HR1, there was a significant pot of funding for rural healthcare transformation. In Illinois, Illinois will receive $193 million a year for the next 5 years from the federal government to make changes to rural healthcare delivery. So they are focusing on keeping rural patients in their rural communities and also building up the rural healthcare workforce. So we are in conversations with HFS, which is our state's Medicaid department, on what that funding will look like and opportunities for UI Health to partner with our state leaders on improving healthcare access to rural communities. And then I also wanted to share with you some federal delegation changes. Senator Dick Durbin and Congressman Danny Davis, our hospital is in Danny Davis's district, and these two gentlemen will be retiring. They joined office at the same time in 1996, so they have been in Congress for 30 years, and their retirement has set off a flurry of activity of people, wanting to run for their Senate seats, their Senate and their House seats. So on the Senate side, some of the top contenders, the ones with the most funding, are Raja Krishnamurthy and Robin Kelly, who are currently in Congress, and then Juliana Stratton is currently our lieutenant governor. And then there are several other federal delegation changes. If you're a North Sider like me, Jan Schakowsky is retiring. She has been around, I think, since 1999, so not quite 30 years, but almost there. So this will, the longitude of how long these men have been in office will certainly create really big changes for us in Illinois. Moving to the state side. So the Illinois General Assembly is in session from January to May. The House and the Senate have their own calendars, and usually there's some coordination between the two chambers, but this year they seem to have opposing calendars, and there's only like 26 days when both chambers are both in Springfield at the same time, which will make it really difficult to get much of anything done. But coming up on February 18th is the governor's State of the State and budget address. And so at this speech in the middle of the month, we will have some more insight into the governor's wish list for his budget and also his major policy priorities for this upcoming legislative session. On February 25th, the University of Illinois system is having a big advocacy day in Springfield and advocating for their main policy priorities as well as their budget request, which includes some additional funding for the University of Illinois hospital line item to hopefully offset some of the financial challenges that we'll see as a result of these HR1 changes. And then March 17th is the primary election. So there's really not going to be much activity in Springfield until after the primary election. And this means that a lot of the legislation that we are seeing so far is in an election year really splashy and dramatic policy proposals that make for really good press opportunities for folks running for office, but do not always translate to actual policy. Legislators don't love to vote on splashy and dramatic proposals during an election year, but just wanted to get that out for your awareness. If you see any wild bills being proposed, that may more be a press opportunity than a serious policy proposal. But on the policy front, we are hopeful for 340B program protections on the state level. So on Sunday, the Illinois Hospital Association and Primary Healthcare Association had a big rally of support for 340B protections that will just maintain the status quo of the 340B program for 340B providers here in Illinois. That initiative passed the Senate unanimously, installed in the House, but we're hoping that in the next couple of weeks, when everyone is back in Springfield, there will be a push across the finish line for those 340B protections. And then I anticipate we will also see some more legislation around immigration. Last year, there was a bill to protect patients in hospitals from ICE intervention. So I think we'll see some more policies along those lines. And then again, healthcare affordability continues to be top of mind at the state level as well. There's already some policies out there regarding hospitals posting the cost of every single service that they provide on the website, or letting patients know before they get into an ambulance how much their ambulance ride might cost them, which are very tricky to implement in actuality, but we do anticipate seeing some more ideas to help make healthcare more affordable for folks. And then I wanted to conclude with some government relations resources. So when we think about some of the policies facing our healthcare system on both the state and federal level, we work really closely with associations. On the federal level, the Association of American Medical Colleges and America's Essential Hospitals, we work closely with them to advocate for federal policies. The Illinois Hospital Association, the Nurses Association, we work really closely with on the state level. And we also make use of the University of Illinois system. So I mentioned the Advocacy Day that's coming up in the end of the month. So I work really closely with all of my colleagues at the system level to use the weight of the entire academic enterprise when advocating for UI Health and our healthcare priorities. But I also wanted to lead you with a resource at risk of sounding too corny or like your middle school government affairs teacher. It is very, very important, and I would encourage all of you to contact your elected officials. If you don't know who they are, you can go to the State Board of Elections website, elections.il.gov, and type in your address, and it will tell you who your legislator is on both the state and federal level. And I would encourage you to call their offices to weigh in on any policy priorities that you see that would really impact your practice or your patients. A tip from a former staffer: for the Springfield state level legislators, make sure that you are calling their Springfield office. And then for our federal delegation, make sure that you are calling their DC office. Both state and federal folks have district offices that are more for constituent issues. So call the Springfield office, call the DC office, and let them know, number one, that you are a constituent, because legislators really only want to hear from their constituents, but let them know that you are a provider in their community and that you have concerns or that you support healthcare policy. And also need to say, advocate for this on your own time, not on your work computer, not on your work phone. But I really would encourage you to reach out to members, because it does make a difference. And especially with all of the healthcare challenges, hearing from healthcare providers or healthcare administrators in particular, it really does make an impact with legislators. And with that, this is my contact information. Feel free to email me with any questions. If you hear of policies in Springfield or in DC that you have questions about, I would be happy to answer any questions you have, or chat further on any of these policies that I've shared here. Well, that's it.
All right. Thank you again to Lauren for your important update. Next, we are going to shift gears a little bit to speak to some of these amazing resources that the organization is ensuring that you as leaders have at your fingertips as we're investigating different case scenarios and how to be have effective process improvement and things of that nature. So we're going to bring to the stage Maggie Poquet to speak to the overview of these resources.
Good morning, everyone. It's been a wonderful session so far, and it's nice to see everybody together. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be providing an overview, or for some of you, an introduction to 6 organizational resources that we, as UI Health leaders, have the opportunity to leverage. These resources are the same ones that other top-performing organizations invest in and utilize. And my goal is to show you how these resources support you as a leader and enable better decision making. And I hope to do this by bringing awareness to what resources are available and what they provide, showing you how these resources have been used at UI Health and how they are applicable to your role, and making sure you know how to access them and who to reach out to for support. Our portfolio of resources, these are the ones that we've chosen to highlight today: Advisory Board, the Medical Group Management Association, or MGMA, Vizient, Epic UserWeb, the Healthcare Financial Management Association, or HFMA, and SG2. You'll notice the dashed line around Vizient and SG2. That's because SG2 is now a part of Vizient, although for the purposes of this presentation, we wanted to display them as distinct. Now, this list is not exhaustive. UI Health has resources available to us beyond these 6. You may recall from last week's leadership presentation when Sheila Cook presented the Barrel Institute organizational membership. We won't be talking about that one today, but you can access the membership on the Office of Strategy intranet site or reach out to the patient experience team for help. As a strategy leader, I'd be remiss not to connect this to our organizational strategies. This is why we're presenting these resources today. We all want to be more informed, more competitive, and more nimble in executing on these 5 strategies and achieving our mission to advance health for everyone. These resources help make strategy more actionable. So, as our team has learned more about these resources, we've realized they offer a lot, honestly, an overwhelming amount. But to help us think about them, we distilled it down to 4 main capabilities. First, anticipate and assess. These resources are meant to help us know where we stand and see what's coming next in healthcare. Second, stay informed. At times, it feels impossible to keep up with everything going on in healthcare, and these tools curate information to help us stay current without too much searching. Third, develop capabilities. These platforms offer professional development opportunities, certifications, and training that help us build the competencies that we need as leaders. And fourth, my personal favorite, connect and tap into peer wisdom. These resources give us access to forums, networks, and direct connections to colleagues at other health systems who are often willing to share their best practices. And this goes both ways. We've accomplished a lot that we should be proud of, and we should feel empowered to share our best practices with peers across the country. So when you leave here today, and if you remember anything from my presentation, I encourage you to remember these 4 capabilities when you're thinking about how these resources can support you in your day-to-day. Now, at your tables, you also have a colorful one-pager. On the front side, titled Resource Guide, we've listed all the 6 resources with a blurb on what they offer. You'll notice that there is an asterisk with a footnote at the bottom. Some of the tools referenced today, particularly the data analytics tools, aren't fully self-service for everyone. There are dedicated teams at the organization who help pull together some of the information to ensure consistency in data and reporting. So if you do hit a wall accessing something, that's okay. Reach out to the contacts listed and they'll be able to help get you what you need. On the backside, titled Quick Start Guide, we have sign up and access instructions. We've also included internal UI Health contacts for each platform. We know from experience it's often easier to reach out to a familiar face with questions or for support. So we wanted to make sure you knew who those people were. The rest of this presentation is organized around 3 questions to help you learn more about the offerings of these different memberships and resources. As healthcare leaders, we're often asking some version of these questions. Once you see the pattern of which resources map to which questions, you'll start to become more familiar of where to go when you need answers. So let's check out question number 1, where is healthcare headed? When we talk about where healthcare is headed, we wonder about what demand is changing, how are our patients and communities changing, and how are others in the industry responding? For these resources, Advisory Board and SG2 are often the first resources that come to mind. With Advisory Board, we have an enterprise-wide membership. They provide research and best practices on operational and strategic challenges that healthcare leaders face. You saw firsthand this morning the level of expertise and detailed insight in Ford's presentation. That level of insight is also available to you online through their research reports, webinars, expert briefings, podcasts, and more. SG2 is a similar resource that also helps us see where healthcare is headed via research reports, e-newsletters, webinars, and other publications. We often turn to them when we have questions about demand forecasts, payment model changes, and workforce and consumer behavior trends. I personally like their resource kits. They collate all their insights by a topic, so everything you need on a specific issue is in one place. Used together, SG2 and Advisory Board give us the near-term context along with the longer-term outlook that we need. This is one example of how we've used SG2 to help us answer the question, where is healthcare headed? In our office, we often seek to understand the entire patient care continuum and how it will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years. One of our overarching priorities is developing and implementing a post-acute care strategy. We know our population is aging and getting sicker, which means increased demand for post-acute care services. In this graphic, SG2's data shows us that a significant amount of that care will be shifting toward the home in the next 10 years. Understanding how and where that care will be delivered is important to us so we can bring this information to the table as we craft and refine our strategies and ensure we're positioning our organization to deliver the care that is needed. Now, let's move on to question number 2. How do we compare to other organizations? As we just saw, looking ahead is critical, but so is an honest assessment of our current performance. When we ask these questions, we're wondering about our performance against peers, whether we're achieving the outcomes that we expected, and where we need to focus our improvement efforts. To help us answer how do we compare, Vizient and MGMA are 2 of the resources we think about. I'll actually start with MGMA. MGMA, specifically their Data Dive platform, is a benchmarking resource that's more focused on medical groups and practice operations. They have financial and operational benchmarking ranging from procedural productivity metrics to fair market value compensation. One tool worth noting is their practice evaluation tool. It benchmarks the practice across different operational areas. You answer questions about your current state, and it shows you how you compare to top performers, plus gives you specific MGMA resources to close the gaps. Now, Vizient. Vizient is a healthcare performance improvement company serving around 97% of academic medical centers. Their capabilities span supply chain, clinical operations, pharmacy, workforce, quality improvement, and the list goes on. They are often one of the first places that our internal teams turn for benchmarking needs. You'll hear more details later from our panel speakers about the clinical database and supply analytics, two platforms, again, that we often use for benchmarking. The Vizient offering I want to highlight, and I think the best starting point for everyone in this room, is the Vizient member networks and community groups. Anyone in the organization can create an account and join groups specific to your role or interest. You can search forums or ask questions directly to peers. Some of the questions I saw most recently in one of my community groups, they were asking, what fall risk screening tools do other organizations use? There were also questions about the hand hygiene auditing processes. And another organization was even asking if anyone would be willing to share photos of their huddle boards. As you can see, these community groups can be a great complement to some of the data analytics platforms in Vizient. Data shows us where we stand, but the peer conversations give us context behind the numbers and help us understand how other organizations do the work differently. Combined, this helps us answer, how do we compare? Now let me show you an example of how we've used Vizient to benchmark. I chose this example because, as you know, improving our mortality index has been a huge focus for our organization and is one of our key success metrics this year. What you're seeing here is our mortality index from Q1 2022 to Q4 2025. The solid teal line is UI Health's mortality index, and the dotted teal line shows the mortality index average for 118 academic medical centers. You can see on the left-hand side of the graph how, a few years ago, we consistently tracked above the peer average. This signaled to us that this was something we needed to pay attention to, sparking efforts across the organization. Since then, there's been a lot of great work and progress to close this gap, and you can see that progress now on the right side of the graph as we're tracking much closer to our peers, even dipping into the better performing range in recent quarters. This is just one way we leverage these resources like Vizient. The data gives us visibility into where we stand, helps us prioritize where to focus, and allows us to track progress over time. Now, question 3. How do we move from ideas to execution? When we ask this, we're really asking, what's worked elsewhere? How have others solved similar problems? And how do we move from planning to doing? These are the implementation questions, the how do we actually do this question that turns strategy into action. To answer this question, I actually think a lot of our resources could help, but for now we'll focus on Epic UserWeb, HFMA, and Advisory Board. Epic UserWeb is Epic's online community platform where health systems using Epic can connect with each other. They offer a lot, but what I want to highlight is a lot of their downloadable materials like guides, manuals, and implementation documentation. Most recently, one of my team members was able to access a pretty detailed Visio workflow diagram or process map that they were able to download and then customize to our process. If you've ever created a process map from scratch, you know it could be a little time consuming, so this ended up being a huge time saver for us. You'll hear more about Epic UserWeb and their offerings in the session that is coming up next. HFMA, or the Healthcare Financial Management Association. The name might make you think that's just for the finance team. But as healthcare leaders, we know that having financial literacy is important no matter which areas we oversee. Whether you're making staffing decisions, evaluating new programs, or optimizing operations, there's always a financial component. And HFMA's resources support that. For example, HFMA has a patient financial communications best practice framework that help organizations improve how they communicate costs to patients. It's not just about finance, it's about patient experience and operational efficiency. HFMA offers a lot of guidance and ready-to-use tools that you can take and run with. Lastly, Advisory Board. We talked about Advisory Board earlier for their research, but they also provide a lot of case studies and ready-to-use resources. What I particularly like is their topic-specific presentation templates. You can download a PowerPoint deck that is already built and then customize it for your needs and bring it to your next meeting. They also have implementation guides and toolkits that, again, you can adapt for your own use. Let's jump into an example of one of these implementation guides. Often, as leaders, we're asked to solve big, complex problems or challenges, like, for instance, improving access. Access is something that many organizations are focused on, and we ourselves have focused success metrics targeting improved access with a lot of great work that's underway. But for example purposes, let's just stick with this one. I want to show you how these resources can help you break down a broad and complex challenge into some more manageable steps. In this example specifically, there are frameworks for defining access, dashboards showing what other organizations measure when it comes to access, and case studies on how other organizations have implemented improvements related to appointment availability. My favorite part is that you get to see how others have done it, what the different approaches were, what metrics were important to them, and what solutions they've implemented. You can look at a broad problem or a challenge from multiple angles and develop your own approach by taking what you think is valuable and leaving what you don't. I see these as a springboard for getting started, and then you develop or tailor your approach for UI Health. Now we're about 15 minutes in, and this has just been a very, very high-level overview of what's available in these resources. This is a start. There's so much more. And although we've used this 3-question framework today, we know many of you probably have more specific questions that need answering. So for the next 5 minutes, here's what I want you to do. Think about a problem, challenge, or question you're trying to solve within your department. Identify one resource you'd like to explore that could help and write it down. And then share with the others at your table. Each table should have pieces of paper with these same prompts for you to use. You'll also see space there for additional questions. Due to the limited time, we won't have a Q&A session after this presentation, but if you have any questions about these resources, this presentation, or anything else, please write them down. We'll be collecting them for follow-up from our office. Knowing what you're thinking can help us provide better support and more targeted resources for you in the future. And with that, I will start the clock for 5 minutes. That's what we have to do. Okay, everyone, I think it's been about 5 minutes. If you could all finish up your activity. Okay, so we've covered a lot really quickly. And naturally, you're wondering, now what? And I want to acknowledge something that I think you all are probably feeling. Sometimes it feels like we're so busy that we barely have time to scarf down our lunches during the day. And adding explore new resources to your to-do list may seem impossible. So because of this, I tried to make these next steps reasonable and manageable. First, I encourage you to take a couple of minutes to create an account or maybe try to remember your password to at least one of these resources that maybe caught your eye or is relevant to your current work. Second, once you get access, I encourage you to explore the resource for 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. Browse, search, see what's available. Third, share with your team. Cascade these resources if you find something that would benefit others, but also share with them on how they can get onto these platforms. And fourth, get support when you need it. Our Office of Strategy intranet site has more detailed information about these resources, including those contacts and access instructions. If there is anything missing there that you would like to see, just let us know. We also encourage you to reach out to us directly. even if you're still working on breaking down a problem into actionable steps, or if you want a more catered version of this presentation to your department, or if you just need a thought partner, we're accessible and available to help. So with that, I thank you all for your attention, and now I have the pleasure of moving us on to the next session. For this, I will invite my colleague Elena Myers up to the stage along with our panelists. Elena has been a huge help in collating a lot of this information and the resources, and we're excited to show you how they've been applied here at UI Health. Thank you.
If we could have our panelists come up. Hi, everyone. Okay. So while our panelists are making their way to the stage, it's my pleasure to introduce this section, which is Resources in Action. You might notice we don't have the PowerPoint behind anymore. We'll still have it on the sides, but we just don't want it shining in our panelists' faces. But Maggie's just spent some time introducing the organizational resources available to us, and including what they are and how they can support decision-making. And this session is about bringing that to life. So you'll hear from leaders up here who have used these resources to tackle real challenges at UI Health, moving from insight to execution. We'll hear 3 case studies, and at the end of all 3, we'll open it up briefly for questions. There are sticky notes and pens at your table. Please write your questions as you're listening, and we'll collect them at the end for Q&A. So maybe pass them around and take a few, and then when you have a question, put your hand up and someone will come around and grab it. So we're starting with a case presented by Tyler Gibbs and Paul Gorski, walking us through how they used Vizient Supply Analytics to achieve meaningful cost savings. Tyler and Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Hey, volume check. Can you hear me okay? How about now? Okay, that was a little embarrassing. Did that eat into my time? Okay. Thank you, Elena. Yeah, it's our pleasure to be here, and we want to talk about implant reduction for our surgical spine program. If we can go on to the next slide, that would be fantastic. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Do you want this? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
For our challenge and opportunity, really what, in terms of spine is a huge wide open space. There's a lack of industry insights and benchmarks into UIH spine cost, and we need that for comparison purposes. Spine surgery, as we know, has a huge amount of SKUs and vendors, and with that, even though Tyler and I are up here by ourselves, this wasn't about us. And I do want to just stop here for just a moment and talk about other folks that really contributed to this. The OR leadership team is sitting right there in the back, and Dorothy Starostecki and her team, I think Dorothy just stepped out there right over there. They were absolutely instrumental in this. Mike Fitzgerald from supply chain as well. So when we think about all these SKUs and vendors, it takes a village to really understand the complexity of this. And I was kind of actually thinking of Agata Tarowski on this, because when you think about the number of vendors and who buys who, the naming conventions are purposely confusing, so to prevent like crosswalks between the two, who's paying what and when. And also, spine surgery is it's expensive and profitable. So in terms of the opportunities, one, we had spine surgeries done by our orthosurgery and neurosurgery. Our department heads were fully vested in hey, we got to get our cost structure down. So it really started with them. Plus, we had an engaged service line dyad partnership, and that was Dr. Ali Alarash from Neurosurgery, who leads our operations QI committee for spine, and was bringing out the calculator and looking at what our cost structures are. He was engaged with us all along the way. And our engaged spine, I just lost the screen. This is really not going well for me. I am so sorry, folks. We're back, thank you. All right, so engaged spine faculty. So Dr. Ankit Mehta and Dr. Sergey Nekrish, as we know, they do a bulk of our spine surgeries here. They advocated day and night for us to secure better pricing with our vendors, and they participated in the process right from the get-go. The other opportunity was to be firm with our suppliers. It is a privilege to be on this campus as a supplier. We expect you to be a good citizen, adhere to our eye care behaviors, and provide pricing that is fair and reasonable. And also utilize our resources, as Maggie Popek just stated really well in terms of Vizient. Yes, we have data sources, but we also have human capital at the Vizient side to help us guide us through that. Oh, my screen is still up. Okay, good. So the challenge and opportunity here. So there's a lot of information that we did not want to present because it'd be just a bit of an eye chart. So I'm just going to kind of draw your attention to the part of the graph where it says 90. If you look on there where those numbers say 90 for DePuy and for Alphatech, we blurred out the numbers because that data is specific to U of I, and we don't want to like kind of broadcast that out. So when we get to the results, we will verbalize the results and use a comparison number. But I need you to remember that number 90. The higher the number is, the higher the price index. That means you are paying more than everybody else. So when we're looking at our highest cost expenditures in the spine space, we're generally 90, 95, and some of our high utilized items were so far off that if we went to 150, which didn't exist, we'd probably be there. So we had a lot of opportunity. Again, fair and reasonable pricing. So this really started out our discussion. Then we dug deeper into the data.
Thank you, Paul. All right, so, that's okay. Yeah. So when we were approached to support with this initiative, we turned to Vizient Supply Analytics and product benchmarking. Now, on the next few slides, you're going to see a lot of data, and that's because we wanted to show you as leaders the wealth of knowledge that's available through these tools, but I'm going to try to guide your attention to some key figures. So to build upon what Paul said about that 90 figure, that price index. So this slide that you're seeing is UI Health collectively. So that's our total medical spend, or our total medical score for our competitive pricing. Here being a 59.71. Now, that number is a score. It's not a specific percentile, but a score that is rated amongst our peers for the lower the number, the more competitive pricing you're getting, the higher the number, the less competitive that you're getting. And then the benchmark savings number is more of a goalpost. It's the amount of dollars that could be available out there should we negotiate more competitive pricing down to a more competitive price index. So these numbers we can drill into to the spend category within Vizient. So as leaders, we can look at different areas of the business for how healthy or competitive our pricing is in that space. So here we have the different categories, their respective price indexes. Then over on the right, we can see the size of that opportunity should we invest our time and resources into negotiating more competitive pricing. And from there, we can dive directly into the suppliers and their scores, as well as the size of their opportunities. Paul, hand back to you.
So the implementation approach to this, and we're kind of following these exact same steps as we go forward. So one, share the story with the surgeons. What are we paying? How does it compare? And why do we think we should be better? You're going to uncover preconceptions. I was told we had the best pricing. No, we don't. I was told we have the best tier pricing, and I've been using these folks for 15 years, however long it is. We actually had to say, no, they're lying to you. And here's the reasons why. Ensure that the data is succinct. As Tyler showed, there's a lot of information and it can be a bit of an overload. So just cut it down to the bare minimum. Share the benchmarks and the goals with the physicians and the stakeholders. We're at the 90th percentile. Are we going for the 50th? Are we going for the 40th? Are we going for the 25th? And why? Ensure that a change in supplier will occur. That means that if I've been using my surgical instruments for spine surgery for 15 years, am I going to change brand? I mean, obviously spine surgery is a highly tactile function. That's a pretty big ask from which to do, and we did secure that. Begin discussions with the supplier. So if you notice, we did the internal negotiation. We did the internal prep before we even brought the supplier initially to the table and asked them for their best pricing first. Then we submitted a counter proposal. So going to the vendor first is actually, no, go to it last. Ensure that you have leverage as an organization before you really start those negotiations. You're next.
Okay, so just like so once we identified the supplier that we need, or the category that we needed to invest our time in, the supplier that we needed to pursue and negotiate with, and the product lines, we then built out a performance pricing agreement. And this agreement is a 4-tiered agreement that secures not only competitive pricing for the volumes that we're currently purchasing today. So if we bought the same volumes as we did last year, it would save us those dollars in that new pricing index. But it also secures us incentive to continue to build our product portfolio or our business portfolio with that supplier for future growth and secure us deeper discounts should we continue to grow our business portfolio with them.
So in terms of results, if you recall that number that I mentioned earlier, 90 with 2 of our supply vendors, we have now secured that price index of 90, it was actually 95 plus later on, to 23 and 25. What does that mean? That means we are paying a price that is comparable to the highest volume organizations in the country. It's a little bit, let me clarify that statement just a little bit. There's always a thought out there, the higher your volume, the better the pricing. That is not true. We have seen places that do smaller volumes than us secure higher pricing. Better pricing, excuse me. You get the point. So with that being said, so we went from the 90th to the 25th. We cut our prices in half for about 50% of our spine implants. And as Agata and Tyler and others, we met yesterday. We have a work queue going on for a couple others as well. So lessons learned. This process takes a lot of time. The data has to be vetted, verified, so many different ways, because you're going to be sharing this with your physician partners, you're going to be sharing this with the vendors, and if there is the slightest mistake, credibility is going to come into play a little bit. You got one shot at getting it right, because these are, multi-year agreements. The other part is you need a sounding board. You really need a physician dyad partner that could, hey, I'm going to send out emails to the faculty that use these equipments. How does this sound? Does this make sense? and engage them so that they are willing to change. As I mentioned, our DIAD partner, Dr. Ali Alaraj, was brought into the room at the end with the vendor and basically closed the deal with them. As he very clearly said to the most recent one, we're happy to have coffee with you, but if you don't agree on with our terms, that coffee will not be on this campus. And so with that being said, that's it.
Thank you both. So that case really is a great example of how data, physician partnership, and persistence come together. Our next case study is going to be presented by Adam Berja, and he is going to talk a little bit about how his team addressed persistent wrong patient errors in pharmacy with the use of Epic User Web. So Adam. Yeah.
Elena looked uncomfortable standing for so long, and I wanted to be thoughtful, so also I couldn't see past the heads of the guys on the end, so you need to see these slides. Okay, so we all have frequent questions about how Epic is supposed to work. We've been in Epic for a while, but there's always new stuff to learn. And we all want to try and solve problems related to Epic workflows. Of course, I'm in pharmacy medication safety, medication workflows, but all kinds of different workflows. We need to understand how Epic is intended to work. One of the questions that always comes up in the meetings that we're in is, what do other organizations do? How do they do the same? How do they face the same problem? Because we're all facing some of the same challenges. So the Epic User Web can help us with each of these things. So what you're looking at here is the landing spot. If you log into the Epic User Web, this is the first thing that you're going to see. And there's three things to point out. It's awfully small, but there's three things that I'm going to briefly talk about. One of them I'll go a little bit more extended into. One is the Epic Forums. The forums are where you can ask questions of other Epic users, questions that maybe you can raise the question yourself, or you can see what questions other users have asked on the topic. And you can oftentimes get a lot of responses back from other users about how they've solved similar challenges that you're trying to solve. So that's the forums. The next thing is the community library. Community library, you can search through things like, if you wanted to see how another organization has built out their order sets. For instance, I was pretty curious about how other organizations were using epinephrine for treatment of anaphylaxis, what types of products they were using. You can actually go in there and search through their order sets, and you can learn a lot about how other organizations have their systems built. And the last thing is the Galaxy Web, and that's something I'm going to go through with a little bit more detail about how we can use the Epic Galaxy, which is kind of like the PDF handbook of all things Epic, how you look to see how it's intended to be used, and some of the features that you might not be aware of if you don't go visit the Galaxy often. So this is your landing spot for the Galaxy Web. So a couple things just to point out. First of all, it knows who you are. So it can look back to see the things that you've searched for in the past, and it keeps those there for you so you can revisit the same topics time and again, because this is a living document, and the Galaxy Web often gets updated as Epic upgrades itself. So the case study I'm going to describe, as Elena had mentioned, was about pharmacy wrong patient errors that had been a persistent problem in pharmacies. It's actually one of the most common problems in pharmacies, not just at our institution, but throughout the country. But we had this pattern of wrong patient errors that were occurring in the dispensing workflow. So we had done audits, we had investigated, and what was revealed is that our staff was very good about using two patient identifiers when the patient arrived to look the patient up, but errors were still occurring when a different patient's medications were obtained from the shelf and dispensed to the patient. So we accidentally potentially grabbed a similarly named patient's medications from the shelf, or instances where perhaps more than one patient's medication had made it into a bag to be dispensed to the patient. So we repeated staff education. We conducted audits every single month. We deployed secret shoppers. I'm looking at Benny about our audits, and errors continued to occur. We did put a lot of effort into this, and we were always observing during our audits, people are doing the two-patient identifier process well. So we, just to put you in the shoes of a pharmacy technician, this is what it looks like when they're going to sell a medication. They have the list of medications that are available for sale on the left, and to actually sell the medication, they can click these little green buttons and it moves it over to the for sale side, and now they can sell the medication. You can see here, I click that little green button, and now we're ready to sell the bumetanide. But this is pretty fraught with error, because even though you've selected that's the medication you're selling, it's not the medication you may have grabbed from the shelf. So that disconnect between the actual product being dispensed and what you've selected for sale is a workflow gap that we knew existed. So what do? We went to the Galaxy Web, and we tried to see, what is Epic's intended workflow for this? What options are there to us? Is there something that we're missing? And this is what we landed on. We went to the Epic Galaxy. We looked up the Willow point of sale system. And right here, number 3, probably can't read it, most of you, but what it says is there's 2 ways you can sell things. You can either click that little green select button, or you can scan the prescription to scan it out. And of course, if we're thinking about what the problem was here, scanning the prescription is what would tie it to that patient. And now we've got a closed loop about what we grabbed from the shelf and whether or not that's the patient we looked up. So that was really great. And now you can see this is the problem we're trying to solve. Today, if you go in to sell a prescription and you click the green select button, this is what pops up. You can't do it without overriding a requirement to barcode scan. We have 99.9% compliance with barcode scanning. We actually prefer to do this because we know it protects us. So that was great. The barcode scan was a game-changing improvement. It wasn't available to us when we went live with Epic, so we had to go into Galaxy to find this new feature. So unfortunately, however, errors did still persist. They were less common, but there are alternate workflows that we can deploy to sell a medication to a patient. So if we grab the medications from the shelf and then scan it, we haven't looked the patient up in advance. We might have the wrong patient in front of us. So what do? We went back to the Galaxy Web. And just a quick orientation to the way information is presented on Galaxy. It's often presented in this way. It'll give you a strategy, and this is where it talks about like through some essentials. And this is like, I often think when I read through the essentials, it's like how the people who are on the back end setting the system up, what they need to think about as they're setting the system up. And you can explore, there's lots of options available when you're setting up your system that people like me who are not the back end builder might not be familiar with unless I go in here to this Galaxy Web. And then the last part of this is the bells and whistles. And this, I like this feature the most. These are like the niche add-ons that are available that might help you with different parts of your workflow. So one of the bells and whistles when we went back in there was a new feature that was available in Epic. And this is something that ISMP, the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, had recommended for quite some time. Have a blind identifier at the point of sale so that you actually have to ask the patient for an identifier and enter that information without the benefit of having their date of birth or their phone number or their home address in front of you. So we didn't know that was available at the time because it wasn't available for a very long time. We had to go back into Galaxy. We found this, and we ended up deploying that on October 9th. I had wanted that for some time, so I remember it like I remember my children's birthdays. So the Galaxy section of the Epic User Web is really great for understanding how your system is supposed to work, gaining awareness of other options that might be available to you, discovering these bells and whistles that might be these niche add-ons that can prevent errors or improve efficiency in your workflows, and also for seeing what's in the pipeline for each application. So I didn't put it on here, but we're very proud. Since October 9th, we have had 0 wrong patient errors at the point of sale interaction, which is a pretty long stretch, 5 months. To be there, and we're very happy. We think this has been a point of satisfaction for our staff members as well, because they feel more protected with this additional check. So thanks for the invitation to share this.
Thank you so much, Adam. You can't argue with those results. And I really like this case because it's a great example of how peer learning in these resources can really accelerate execution. So as you can probably see from the slide, our final case is going to be presented by Bree Babulal and Tom Perrone, and they will be walking us through how they used Vizient to identify meaningful signals and turn them into action. So Bree and Tom, you have the floor.
Thanks, Elena. Can I get the clicker? All right. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Bree and I are really thankful for the opportunity to share a few details regarding our partnership. We will provide a brief introduction. We'll talk about the value of our partnership, how we went from data to insights to trends, as well as early outcomes we've seen, and we'll finish up with the lessons learned and strategic value. So the Chief Quality Office is led by our Chief Quality Officer, Dr. Sargar Hirwani. It includes quality and performance improvement led by Lorna Kaite, as well as HIM coding and privacy led by Margaret Pajak, clinical documentation improvement led by Emily Navidad McDermott, as well as risk management and patient safety led by Rhonda Perna.
Thanks. And so now I will go over our oncology service line structure. So we operate under a dyad leadership model with our medical director, Kent Hoskins, as well as our senior director of administration and operations, Gail Payank. We have a service line operational team that features Dr. Ijaz, who is our associate director of surgical services, as well as myself for the strategic project manager and the director of quality, Mary Airy. Under this, we have multiple support teams that include our intake, outreach, patient, and financial navigators. And we have 18 clinical programs, each with a designated physician leader we use them for their engagement, their leadership, operations, and quality and oversight, and a great way to have our physicians involved in our operational standards. And then we actively partner with advisory groups, marketing, or strategic relationships, patient experience, finance, and today we'll be highlighting our partnership with the CQO office. What our program leadership is currently focusing on, we like to show you these principles because they're directly driving how we think about our metrics as well as our key performance indicators. And so some of those include our growth and capacity, transformative care, program evaluation, and research integration. These pillars truly guide our decision making. They help us ensure our goals we set on our metrics we track are intentional, aligned, and focused on meaningful impact rather than isolated performance metrics. So this slide's kind of a doozy, so I won't go through all of it, but we wanted to make sure we've provided you with a full understanding that that building on the prior slide, that we show how we organize our key performance indicators across our 5 categories, which as you can see are operational, patient experience, clinical quality, financial, and growth. But today we're gonna focus mainly on the operational point and how we wanted to dive into only one small segment of this and how it led to a great partnership. And so that being said, we started looking at our KPI metric of length of stay, and it became our initial entry point to a broader lens, developing a partnership within operational and quality with our CQO office. So after that, we wanted to really just tell you how we got started and kind of how we were sitting here. So our service line operational team kind of met and we started having these internal discussions, and it seems like 3 easy questions that you kind of tend to ask yourselves daily. Is there a length of stay performance issue? Where is the length of stay variation occurring? As well as what is driving this opportunity? And although length of stay was our starting point, we quickly expanded to explore related outcomes within our operational and quality, and that tended to focus more onto our mortality and readmissions, which is what we'll be focusing on today with our partnership with Tom and as Maggie kind of discussed earlier. And so our partnership with the CQO office truly substantiated our questions using data, and their expertise was instrumental, not just validating our trends, but interpreting what we're actually seeing, and it helped us identify actionable opportunities rather than our assumptions. So we first wanted to understand our book of business and really discover and explore what was important. What were our internal structures looking like? What truly mattered? The roles in our patient care journey, disease-specific groups, as well as some metrics and benchmarking, and making sure we were aligning on what's appropriate. And what this all determined was that the right analytical tool for us was the Vizient Clinical Database. And so it became a consistent, incredible foundation to identify areas of opportunity, as well as prioritizing where focused improvement to have great impact.
Thanks, Bree. Continuing on with the partnership, it was very important that we established a monthly cadence. Reviewing the reports and the dashboards live within the Vizient Clinical Database enabled us to have meaningful dialogue regarding the data and trends we were seeing, ensuring that the insights aligned with reality within the oncology service line. This allowed us to focus on high-impact areas and expand the partnership to hematology oncology physicians and faculty. Insights and signals such as length of stay and the mortality index could then be explored further. So now I'll spend some time discussing one of those signals in detail, the mortality index, which Maggie touched on earlier in her presentation. Reminder that improving our mortality index is one of the success metrics in our pursuit of being a zero-harm organization. So what is the mortality index exactly? Well, it's a ratio comparing the observed mortality rate, the number of patients that are unfortunately passing away at UI Health over a period of time, to what's expected, given their age, their gender, their clinical conditions such as metastatic cancer, lymphoma, hypertension, or diabetes. You then take the observed mortality rate divided by the expected mortality rate, and that's what gives you your index. A ratio greater than 1 means that we had more deaths than would have been expected, given our population. Less than 1 means we've had fewer deaths than expected. And our success metric target for the mortality index for FY26 is 0.90. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of having strong clinical documentation capturing the complexity of our patients, as it has a direct impact on the mortality index. All right, so we'll start with some data. This is the hematology oncology baseline data for the first 7 months of calendar year 2025. To the left, we have the percent observed mortality, where lower is better. We're relatively in line with a few local area organizations, such as Universities of Chicago and Loyola. Perhaps opportunity when you look at the academic medical center cohort reflected in green. And just a reminder, the Vizient Academic Medical Center cohort is made up of 118 academic medical centers from across the country. Moving on to the middle, we have our percent expected mortality, where higher is better. And here you can see we are significantly below our peer local organizations, as well as the AMC cohort. This indicates that we have a healthier patient cancer population than our peers. And I see, Gail, not to put you on the spot back there, but I see, but that's not true, right? That is not true. Okay, thank you. And so this divergence has a very large impact on our mortality index calculation, where we, again, are taking that observed over what is expected. And this is putting us significantly behind most local area organizations, as well as the AMC cohort. You can see we're reflected in the blue, and we're the highest, where lower is better. So we have this signal. What are we doing? Well, we've partnered with Vizient to improve our clinical documentation through education, best practices, and process optimization. And while I'll be focusing on the provider education today, this engagement has also touched on a few other critical areas, such as clinical documentation improvement and our coding teams. And as I mentioned earlier, comprehensive and accurate clinical documentation leads to improved outcomes, data quality, higher reimbursement, and higher expected mortality. So back in October, the hematology oncology providers completed their education where they were able to review their Vizient CDB baseline mortality data. They really were then able to understand where there may be opportunities for clinical documentation improvements. You know, does my patient suffer from malnutrition? Or do they have fluid and electrolyte disorders? If so, let me make sure I document that accordingly in the note. Also explored ways to further optimize our Epic EHR to include the creation of smart phrases to automatically pull this documentation into the note where appropriate. And I know there's a future project that is going to be looking to standardize our note templates across many of the service lines to further help with our documentation and ease that burden on our providers to have to remember exactly what needs to be documented. All right, so moving forward to early outcomes, you know, like I mentioned, since the education that happened in mid-October with our hematology oncology providers, we've started to see that documentation looks to be improving and capturing the complexity of our patients. Initial trends suggest positive impacts on the mortality index through an increase in that expected mortality rate, including other outcome metrics, as Bree had mentioned earlier, such as length of stay. And for the last 3 months, the oncology service line, which is represented in the solid blue line, has been at or above the expected mortality of the local area organizations, which in this case is including University of Chicago, Rush, Loyola, and Northwestern. So 3 months, but it's very, very encouraging to see given the trend. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Bree to close with lessons learned and strategic value.
Thanks, Tom. So, what was our biggest takeaway? A strong partnership and close collaboration truly does lead to a shared understanding of what's important. It enables sustained improvement, and it moves us beyond just reporting, and it makes us understand the actual improvement in the outcomes that are occurring. We also are able to leverage our data to make it sure that it's become insights into action. And then, hopefully this works, but if we take a look to the right, I want everyone to shift their gaze to these gears. Every gear has a role, and no single one can dive into the system on its own. But when we work together, we align and the system moves forward as one. So the Vizient clinical database is truly just one critical piece of the puzzle, but only when we paired it with collaboration and expertise that it became an approach that can be scaled to other service lines to support system-wide operations and improvements that truly do align with our strategic value and our initiatives. So with this, we want to bring it back home and always remember that ensure initiatives align with UI Health's strategic plan of being a zero-harm organization, as well as optimizing our patient journey. And when initiatives align with our strategic priorities, they refocus our work to be a mission-driven, and with the right tools and collaborative teams in place, data stops being just numbers. It becomes a story and a signal and a lever for meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both. This case serves as a really strong example of data not just being a way to measure, but an enabler of action. So we've now heard 3 different case studies about different challenges and using different resources to solve them. We're now going to open it up for questions. So just a reminder, if you have questions, please raise your hand with the sticky note with your question on it, and someone will be around to grab it. In the meantime, we have a couple of questions already submitted. So we'll start with those. Grab the remote. So this is a question for the whole panel, but what was the hardest part of moving from insight to execution? So I guess Paul and Tyler, will start with you guys.
I think again, in terms of spine, in terms of these cost structures, getting the sufficient data and understanding where our place in the market was really key. And then developing that story for our physician partners and for all the stakeholders. And internally within the hospital, construct, feedback from supply chain, OR leadership, physicians, and is really key in order to move that forward. And understanding that we're asking for potentially big changes here, whether it's the equipment being used, and believing that the price structure from which we are currently under, we deserve better. A couple of reasons for that really is structure that is fair and reasonable. So really getting all that internal department structure that is fair and reasonable. So really getting all that internal departments aligned with our physicians aligned before we brought in our external vendors.
Thank you. Adam?
I never tested this one. Does it work? Okay, good. So one of the things, we operate 7 outpatient pharmacies. So I think the insight to execution question is about making sure that the solution we put in place worked for everyone, and it actually did not at first. At least it wasn't optimized at first. We have a mail order pharmacy, and when the mail order pharmacy, I'm getting into the weeds again about pharmacy. You guys should all apply for pharmacy technician positions after this. We do have a shortage. But anyway, the key is that the mail order pharmacy actually has 2 screens they're looking at, where this prescription is going to go to and what's in the Epic system. And they don't have the patient in front of them to ask them the question. So what we needed to do is make sure that the element of the question that we were asking, was it date of birth or was it phone number, is something that's on both systems, because it's not going to have much value if you're not checking between both systems. So we ended up working with our mail order pharmacy, found out from them that it is actually the last 4 digits of their phone number that would work. And we applied that at that pharmacy, and it was just a little bit different than what we had done other places. So, you know, whatever you find on that user web, there probably will always be some tailoring of your system that you're going to need to get involvement of the stakeholders who are at the bedside or at the pharmacy to help you figure out how to implement it best.
Thank you. Bree and Tom?
Sure, I'll take this one. You know, I've been in IT for 20 years, 23 years in healthcare information technology, and you know, it's easy for me to pick up these new tools, use these new tools, create some reports, build some fancy dashboards. But it's another thing to understand the clinical aspect. And you know, at my time at UI Health, the basis of my clinical knowledge comes from working with many of you in this room, right? And I know Bree touched on it in one of her slides, where you know, one of the most important things that we did when we started getting together and having conversations was to really understand the business, understand what is important, how the business works, what's specific is about the patients that we care for. And so that really kind of resonated with me, where it was a big learning opportunity, I think, for us to come together and understand what each of us is able to bring to the table.
Definitely. Thank you both. Bree and Tom, not to kick it right back to you guys, but specifically for your case, a lot of the initial focus was on improving documentation to better reflect the patient complexity and raise that expected mortality to mirror what we knew we were experiencing. Were there other opportunities or areas of opportunities that surfaced as you were looking at the data?
I can begin. So I think, for example, we looked at the mortality index projections, right? And so we are continuously meeting. We meet on a monthly cadence as well. And so we started looking at these projections over the next 3 years. And we started even kind of diving deeper, like how is it impacting our Medicare reimbursement? Or who can support this as well? Like who do we need on our clinical staff as well? And it's kind of thinking about those operational sidebars. But then also, as we kind of went more and more deeper into this, these are trends, but we are now able to get a little bit more granular and start looking at where are these disease groups, specifically mortality index group, like changes occurring, and making sure that we can actually leverage personalized opportunities for improvement. And I think, like we said, kind of at the beginning of our presentation, we started with length of stay, and it kind of trickled into just a larger facet, which was really great.
Yeah, and just to add, I think, we met on yesterday, right? Yeah, we met yesterday morning. And every time we get together, it's something new. And so yesterday we started having conversations about what is the potential impact of our inpatient hospice program, which we are getting ready to go live with and roll out, and what will that impact from a oncology service line, hematology oncology, have on that mortality index, and start doing some projections. So,
Thank you both. Sounds like lots of good work to come. Adam, it's easy to get lost in Epic User Web or really any of the resources, but for this case, Epic User Web with all that's available. How would you recommend someone get started so as to not feel overwhelmed?
Okay, thank you. Maggie mentioned 15-minute assignment. Everybody's supposed to go in and try one of these. It's not a competition, but I hope you all choose UserWeb. And if you do choose UserWeb, the best way to get started is to start with a question. Whatever it is that you're having trouble with right now, the question that you need to solve, go in with that question, ask the forum exactly what's on your mind. Actually, in the Galaxy Web that I mentioned, there's a keyword search, just like a normal Google bar. They've actually implemented also a semantic search. It's like an LLM. So you can actually ask the actual question you want of the Epic Galaxy as well, and it will give you a short sort of ChatGPT-like answer to your question, and also refer you to the resources within the Galaxy documentation that would show you where to find that information with more detail.
Thank you. Tyler and Paul, when switching to a new vendor to achieve cost savings, I assume that if you didn't in this case, you will in future instances get questions about, how do you ensure that outcomes stay the same or improve? So what would be your answer to that?
As far as outcomes, when you're pursuing cost savings, that should be the outcome of a competitive bid or negotiating with your vendors. Cost savings should never be the driving force behind a healthcare organization. It should always be focused on outcomes. And we'll be getting more insights into outcomes related to product changes as we pursue procedural analytics. That's something that's currently underway. And once we have visibility to that, we'll have a lot more insights as far as outcomes from a supply chain perspective. Otherwise, right now we're at the mercy of our clinical teams to provide that data back to us.
Thanks. Love the plug for a new resource coming soon.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much to our panelists. Really appreciate it. Can we give them a quick round of applause? If you have any additional questions or need additional support, you can, of course, reach out to any of our panelists or the Office of Strategy, and we can make those connections or provide additional information. But what you hopefully picked up across all three examples is a common theme, and that's that these resources do not create value on their own. They create resources when leaders like you use them to ask better questions, partner across disciplines, and act. And that's exactly why we invest in these memberships, in these resources, and why sharing access and expertise across teams matters. As you think about what you heard today, I'd really encourage you to consider where a similar approach could apply in your own area, whether it's benchmarking, peer learning, or execution support. And now I will turn it back to April to introduce our next session.
Another round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much. All right. Again, if you have questions, please put them on the sticky note. We will come around to collect them. If you have questions for forward 2, just put forward at the top and write your questions. We want to make sure to get back to everyone since we don't have time. All right, so next we're going to identify and look to what's ahead as we are planning for growth and innovation. So it is my pleasure to bring to the stage Julia Louie, who's going to introduce what's next.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, April. I'm excited to be here today to share important work underway for our master facility plan and our Southeast Quadrant project. Let's begin with our master facility plan. As we've heard throughout today's session, there are many tools and resources that help shape our strategic direction and vision for the future. Our team's role is to work with leadership and translate these ideas into actionable facility plans that support long-term growth. In the spring of 2024, the hospital and clinics refreshed our strategic plan and updated growth projections, building on the foundation of our 2019 strategic plan. As part of this effort, ECG partnered with us to forecast the inpatient bed needs and ancillary service projections. In parallel, ambulatory team and strategy developed updated growth projections for our outpatient clinics. These items are essential inputs to the master facility plan. They guide how we determine facility needs, prioritize investments, and plan for the future of our campus. As part of the UIC West campus, our starting point for planning reaches back to two foundational efforts: the hospital's master facility plan from 2009 and the UIC campus plan that was completed in 2018. The hospital had two major projects, the Welcome Atrium and the Specialty Care Building, that have been completed, and the Southeast Quadrant is underway. We have 4 additional projects that remain unbuilt, and those will be reevaluated as part of our current master facility plan. Our hospital and clinics operate within the broader structure of UIC and the University of Illinois system. As a result, our planning work requires close coordination with multiple partners across the university. Ultimately, our final master plan will require endorsement by the chancellor and approval of the Board of Trustees. This ensures our facility strategy is aligned not only with our own goals as UI Health, but the long-term vision of the university system. At the outset of our work with Perkins and Will, we held a visioning session with our senior leaders to define our guiding principles that will anchor this effort. These principles are organized into 3 overarching themes: world-class care, a community beacon, and maximize investment. These themes serve as the evaluation criteria that we use when developing and comparing future growth options. They help ensure that every decision supports our healthcare and educational mission, strengthens our community presence, and makes responsible use of all of our resources. As we began our master facility plan, we used those strategic inputs and visioning. From there, we've been collaborating closely with our consultants, Perkins and Will. Their team has spent significant time on site, walking our buildings and gaining firsthand understanding of our current environment. Their assessment includes evaluating our conditions and functions of our current spaces, validating the amount of space we currently have, benchmarking against today's codes, standards, and industry guidelines, determining the space required to support our projected growth. This comprehensive approach ensures that our master facility plan is grounded in real data, aligned with our institutional strategies, and designed to meet the needs of our patients, staff, and community for years to come. The UIC campuses are dense urban environments which add to the complexity of our planning. As part of their analysis, Perkins and Will conducted a comprehensive review of potential opportunities for expansion on the West Campus. The plan on this slide illustrates how each block was identified and evaluated to determine whether it could support our programmatic needs. Each need has specific parameters, and those parameters help us determine which options are truly viable. The next steps brings us to scenario development. Using all of this information gathered, our consultant team began identifying opportunities for consideration. We evaluated multiple scenarios through the lens of our guiding principles, with a particular lens on inpatient and outpatient growth adjacent to our existing facilities. Initially, we explored about 8 to 10 high-level options looking across this West Campus, and through the evaluation and refinement, we've narrowed those down to 2 scenarios for further development. As we evaluate these 2 final scenarios, our short-term priorities will shape our long-term framework for facility growth, while our decisions today must also align with our future as we aim to create. And our work continues on the master plan. Next, let's take a look at our Southeast Quadrant project. Emergency departments nationwide have faced unprecedented strain from COVID-19, rising patient boarding, and our organization is no exception. These pressures prompted us to closely examine how we can better support patient care and strengthen operational resilience. The Southeast Quadrant expansion represents the culmination of a vision of several years ago. Early planning explored a similar direction, but as our institutional priorities evolved, so did the project itself. What initially started as a targeted expansion to relieve immediate capacity pressures has transformed into a comprehensive, future-focused solution. The Southeast Quadrant project was first conceptualized in FY21 as part of a state funding request aimed at expanding hospital access expansion. The initial scope included adding the clinical decision unit adjacent to the emergency department, an early response to increasing patient volumes, the operational pressures facing frontline care teams. By FY23, the project had advanced into an initial concept design for a 3-story addition. This work coincided with the preparations of our master facilities plan, creating an opportunity for us to ensure that the project aligned with the long-term institutional priorities rather than serving as just a single standalone expansion. In early FY25, we received a $20 million grant from the state through the Illinois Board of Higher Education, and that is what helped us get this project restarted. This is the overall scope for our Southeast Quadrant project. I'm going to jump over here quickly. This image shows our hospital from the east, along with the massing for the new Southeast Quadrant expansion. The project will be constructed on the plaza that is adjacent to the emergency department entrance. On the first floor, the addition extends eastward to align with the existing emergency department entry vestibule. Along the south facade, the design incorporates windows that bring natural light to a new public access corridor on the first floor that will connect the new emergency waiting room back to the main hospital. The existing floor plan illustrates the full extent of the project, how it interfaces with our current hospital footprint. This view helps highlight the scale of the project and work and who will be impacted. As we move forward, our enabling planning is now underway. This phase is essential for preparing the site and surrounding operations for the larger project. It includes identifying temporary relocations, assessing utility impacts, planning for departmental moves, and sequencing early work to ensure that patient care and daily operations continue with minimal disruption to construction. The enabling phase sets the foundation for a smooth transition to the full construction and helps to ensure that project progresses efficiently. This is the current plan for the first floor. As you can see, we have a new public entrance on the southeast corner of the project, which will lead to a larger, more comfortable waiting room. We have a vertical care zone to improve our patient flow within our emergency department. Direct access from the emergency department to the clinical decision unit. Relocation of our admitting department closer to the welcome atrium. and expanding our discharge lounge to support smoother transitions. A key goal has been improving ease of movement for patients and families. So the new public corridor that's shown here in teal provides a clear accessible path from the new emergency waiting room back to the welcome atrium, the cafeteria, and Java City. It will also have access for families to the inpatient elevators for the inpatient units. This is our high-level timeline. We are currently in schematic design, and we continue to collaborate with departments on our remaining design phases. We are projecting, the project is advancing through our standard Illinois procurement process for construction projects in partnership with the university's project management office, which is PSPM, which a lot of you know. Our construction will occur in phases, and that is part of the work that we're doing right now with the enabling. So as part of our process and being part of the university, we have to present our exterior design to the design review committee. And we have completed that task for the schematic design. So today I'm thrilled to be able to share these images of the new expansion for our southeast quadrant. The first image showed the relationship between the welcome atrium that was on the west side of our campus or of our hospital building with the new addition. The last image zoomed in so that you could see that addition closer up with the nice windows on facing Taylor Street. This perspective from the east shows the intentional variation in the transparency of our second and third floors that reflect our planning for our future growth on those floors. And this final image shows the addition from the west during our winter months, giving us a sense, even though there are leaves on the trees, but that's okay, giving a sense of how the building will integrate with the campus year-round. We're very excited about this project and grateful for everyone who has been working with us so far, and we have many more who will be incorporated in the project as we move it forward. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you, Julia, for the update. It is my pleasure to announce Dr. Chestek. His presentation is in alignment with Ford earlier as we were speaking to AI, and he's going to provide a glimpse of what are we doing as an organization, so a sneak peek. Thank you, Dr. Chestek.
Thank you. I'm wondering if AI put leaves on those trees in the winter. Okay, so I have the privilege to talk about what we're doing in artificial intelligence for the next 10 minutes or so. I'm going to structure this in 4 parts. Couple slides on some basics of AI that hopefully you can take with you from here. And then sort of what are we doing right now? What is in process that's about to be delivered soon? And then sort of a more forward-looking, what are we going to be doing 5 to 10 years from now? So I want to keep this purposefully basic. I really don't think you need to be a computer scientist to understand how artificial intelligence works. I think part of it is demystifying some of the confusions, and I think the general definition can be one of those very confusing things. Really, it's a computer doing a thing that a human would otherwise do, is the way that I think about it. So this is a more involved definition, but I wouldn't get too lost in all the different complexities. A couple of things that I do think are important in differentiating different kinds of systems is deterministic and probabilistic. So an example of deterministic AI are fixed rules, predictable outputs. Fundamentally, you put in the same input, you will get the same output every time. Some examples are fraud detection, recommendation engines. I have an example here of Epic's sepsis model. So while every patient has a lot of different data, if you were to put the same set of data into that model, you're going to get the same score out every time. And so that is a version of AI. You can call it machine learning as well. We've been doing that for a while. A more complex version of AI is probabilistic. And that's what you've probably seen more in the news lately. So it's statistical inference, and the key here is with uncertainty. So the outputs are varying. You can put the same input in, and you might get slightly different answers each time for the exact same input. And so the examples are the chatbots. That's the way that they're able to generate net new content from relatively small inputs because they're making some guesses. So these are some of the three main models that you may hear: ChatGPT from OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, and Gemini from Google. And just the comment at the bottom there, generally most modern systems use both of these things. They'll do some deterministic predictions and then also do some probabilistic and merge those together. And then some general AI categories that I think is helpful to keep in mind. This generative AI comes from generating net new things. So it creates new text, images, audio, things like that from prompts. Predictive AI is more that deterministic sense where it analyzes some data and it might predict some future data. Computer vision interprets visual information. It's sort of a single modality in contrast with the multimodal AI where it can process multiple image types or multiple data types, text, images, audio together. I call out computer vision separately just because I think it's a big burgeoning area right now. Agentic AI is a big buzzword, and that just means that there's some autonomous work being done by an agent. And so it'll do multiple steps without human intervention. That's becoming all the rage now when you hear about vibe coding or something like that. You put a prompt in and the computer will go and write code for you and test it and do more things. That's agentic. And then embedded AI are just features within a larger set that is AI related. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But to boil this all down, there are really just three things. This is all new, so pay attention, check everything, and if it's wrong, it's your fault, not the AI's fault. And I joke, but it's really true. And especially once we get into the agentic world where things are really happening autonomously, that might not be true anymore. But for today, everything that we have deployed or is in the near future pipeline needs to be checked by a person, and that person is ultimately responsible for the output. So I think that's a really fundamental point. So moving into what are we already doing right now, a lot of what we're doing is deploying things that are available through Epic. So they have an AI text assistant that essentially lets you highlight some text and make some changes, such as make this less formal, so you can make it more patient-friendly, I think is another one. One of the things that has excited me the most are some of the summary tools that are coming out of Epic, and we currently have AI summaries being produced for the inpatient, outpatient, and emergency department space. And I think this is particularly powerful because over the last couple decades, when we've transitioned electronically, we just have this EHR filled with data that no one can find. And there are some basic search functions, but grabbing all this disparate data and putting it in a package that's useful for a provider or a clinician or anyone is just really helpful. We're able to draft hospital courses, draft responses in the in-basket, and we're starting to work on some revenue cycle, which you heard from Ford earlier this morning. Some of those are in pilot phase. In terms of our third-party vendors, there's a lot happening in the ambient listening space. Again, sort of foreshadowed by Ford, we signed a contract with Abridge, and we're fairly rapidly getting good adoption. We're using GI Genius, which is a polyp detection tool for gastroenterologists, some diabetic retinopathy screening. We do have the ability to purchase through the university Microsoft Copilot. That's still under a pilot sort of limited use phase. And we also signed a BAA with Doximity, which is DocsGPT. So we have an LLM that you can put patient data in and help develop personalized education and things like that. We're also working to expand some of the infrastructure that we have to deal with this AI wave. So we have a lead AI assessment coordinator that was just hired, associate chief medical information officer for AI and innovation. We're starting up an AI steering committee, working group, and interest group. And I'll go into those details on the next slide, but these are basically resources that will help us with our PAP intake process to better evaluate AI and how it can affect our organization. So this is sort of the basic structure. We have our UI health system governance at the top. There is an EHR alignment committee where many of our big EHR decisions come. And we're instituting a steering committee for AI that actually is meeting for the first time next week. And that's really about decision-making, direction, setting, focusing on products that we're going to be intaking, and then setting long-term strategy. What are the 3 or 4 areas that we want to do a little extra work and pilot some things and get ahead of the curve on? And then there's a working group that reports up to the steering committee that's really going to do a lot of the work as directed by the steering committee. And one of their big focuses is going to be monitoring existing tools that we have in place. Because the tools that I listed right now that we have in place, we aren't doing a lot of active, proactive monitoring. And these models can drift. And I think with many software technologies, but particularly with this, you have to keep some cadence of making sure that they're doing what they did yesterday, because models change in the background. And then we're also going to have an AI interest group that is going to be broadly open to everybody, and we want to really publicize this. And it might be on a monthly cadence. We'll have some educational series on how you keep up with this fast-paced world and what's new in AI. So things that we're about to do, in 2 flavors. One of them is things that are coming out of Epic. There's a couple hundred active AI development projects within Epic. So in our next upgrade in April, these are all the things that are sort of on the docket for us to evaluate. Very excited about the lung nodule follow-ups. I won't go through all of these, but we've spent a lot of time working with the lung nodule follow-ups, searches through the text from an impression from a radiologist on a CT or MRI or something like that, and we're focusing in on pulmonary nodules from ED department CT scans, because we may order the study not to find the incidental lung nodule and then it gets missed. And so it can search through and take this free text and then put a discrete task on someone's list to follow up with. So we're working with the Cancer Center to operationalize that. And we're also investigating some of the patient experience and operational administrative tools. I won't jump into each one of these because there's a lot to talk about. And we haven't decided to turn all of these on yet. These are what's available. In terms of third-party tools, there's a lot of really exciting things out there. One thing I am particularly excited about is with these large language models, searching through text and providing direct answers is what people are coming to expect. And we have a lot of policies and guidelines that I think a lot of people don't know about, or if they do, they have a hard time accessing. And it got a bit better with the updated intranet site that you can search. But this would allow us to actually type a direct question in and say, can I admit this patient with X disease on this floor? And it'll look at our internal guidelines to see what we say about that. There's Cancer Insights helps to intake cancer patients and get care plans for them. We're investigating very preliminarily what a smart room would look like at our hospital, where there's some computer vision predicting when a patient might fall, doing virtual sitting, OR throughput, patient throughput, is that patient room actually clean? Did somebody forget to push the manual button? So I think there's a lot of potential to automate manual tasks. Providing a more robust LLM, potentially one of those big 3 vendors with a HIPAA compliant instance that we can put our data into, sensitive private data, and do good work. And then our ambient listening solution is expanding into new things, like not just documenting what you say, but queuing up orders and potentially alleviating some of the nursing documentation burden. So I'll close up by giving a couple thoughts about what we're going to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years. And unfortunately, I have some bad news. I actually don't completely know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. I know that may surprise everybody, but I have some thoughts. I think the only constant in the world is change, and so fundamentally, we will work differently 5 to 10 years from now than we're working now. I mean, these AI agents are coming. They're not going to be here this year, or maybe not even next year, but things that we're doing today are going to be automated by these agents, and we have to figure out how we're going to manage that. The ambient work is just beginning. I think the people who have adopted it really like it on the physician front. It's going to expand into nursing, I think, and just the way that we interact with the EHR is going to be much more verbal and a lot less clicking, which I think is great for everybody. This is one of the big wins. This is why it's taking off. I really do think that the ability to do this computing with these powerful chips right on the cameras, and importantly, the video is not recorded. It is just live streamed, and you can make predictions in real time based on this stream of data. It has a lot of really huge implications for us operating more efficiently, but there's also a cost to start doing these things and hardware investments. And so finding that balance and figuring out where this will help us, I think is going to be a very near-term question, and hopefully will be deployed soon. And then I think the last thing to focus on is that we have to understand that our patients are accessing these tools right now. They're consumer facing. I think Ford shows some statistics about people consulting their chatbot more frequently than they consult their primary care physician. And I think we have to acknowledge that that's happening and help counsel our patients on how to deal with this technology. So whether or not we're ready for it, our patients are using it, and we have to get ready for it. And then I'll put this up. We have a new email address, UI Health AI. That's not UI Health AI. UI Health AI at uic.edu, and that's going to be an email address for questions. I'm also available after this, happy to chat. This was a fairly quick, high-level overview. I much prefer talking about AI than why Epic moved its search bar again. So this is an exciting thing for me to talk about. Happy to talk anytime or set up any time, on a meeting after this. Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Dr. Chestek. All right, well, we're going to welcome to the stage Dr. Janet Lin for closing remarks.
While I do this, I'm going to make everybody stand up because we've been sitting a very long time and we just fed forward a whole bunch of information. Has anybody ever done a power pose? Yes, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. You just do whatever pose you want to do that makes you feel powerful.
It's recorded. Go
ahead. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Power pose! Oh, you guys are lame. I gotta close, so come on. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Power pose! Oh, John, come on. All right, fine. I'm just trying to wake you up because I know we had a ton of information. We didn't have much time to do a lot of interaction. Hopefully you found some of these things valuable. Hopefully you actually learned something you did not know today. Or if you did know some of these resources, you've identified some ways in which you might use these differently or in a new way, but also see how, through some of these examples, how they can be useful in your day-to-day operations, as well as for helping to make some decisions related to that. The other thing I wanted to say is, the other thing today is about linkage, connection, and knowing your resources. We wanted to be able to demonstrate how these can be useful to actually implement our strategies such that we are able to execute on our mission and our vision and really thinking about it from a forward and future thinking mindset. The other thing, just to reinforce, I know we're all in the midst this year of kind of our foundations of leadership and really promoting all of our leaders in developing everyone as leaders and really exceptional leaders. So the other thing I actually drew upon is that, there are many leadership competencies, hopefully that you can draw from this. I actually kind of wrote down and put up it's helping us to drive accountability. It's helping to develop ourselves, but also others. It leads us to be more action-oriented, driving towards results, leading change, but also being really good stewards of our resource management in and of itself. I think there's a couple different things in terms of leaving this. I think, we have lots of challenges, but we have lots of great opportunities. We are a great enterprise. We are also poised to demonstrate to the world that we are a great enterprise with a lot of the work that's going on. And, I think with all of these and the collective healthcare workforce, we're equipped for what's coming up in, the next phase of healthcare. It is not, a doomsday. It is actually going to move forward, and we want to be part of that. And so really, we are prepared. We are preparing for ourselves for the future, and we are necessary. So I think really thank you for the day. If you have questions, we actually try to make that opportunity, recognizing we're going to run out of time. So if you have questions, that's great. And I think Scott wants to do the last final.
Thanks, Janet. I feel like I need to because my name was on the screen. I wasn't planning on this. But I do want to make sure we thank the Office of Strategic Planning and Organizational Development for putting this together. Thank you all. And I'm going to say it again. It is an exciting time to be at UI Health. And I felt that this morning coming in here. I feel it even more so now leaving after all this conversation. And you all are the ones who are driving this. So thank you for all you do. Let's keep it up and keep going.
All right, I know you're ready to go. So on the screen, you see a QR code for your feedback. We will send an email. Since it's being recorded live, once it's available, we will post it inside of the LMS TMS and send out communications with the survey. Lunch is available outside. We have this room until 2 o'clock. If you have the time, we invite you to please grab your lunch, come back in, network with your fellow leaders. And thank you so much for your time. Everyone stay safe and warm.